Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the SuperShow podcast, episode number 125. I'm your host for this week, Jamie, and joining me, I'm very glad to be able to say, is a man sporting either the best or the worst gaming hoodie I've seen in months. I can't quite make up my mind. Mr. Alex Jones.
I can't believe you threw me under the bus that quickly. Like, I thought there'd be 5-10 minutes where you'd let me stew.
For the record, I got permission from Jonesy before we started recording to bring up the hoodie because I didn't want to put him on the spot. But yeah, he probably thought he'd get a bit more buffer time to ease into the recording before I called him out on his attire. I hate to start a podcast this early on with a segment that might only be relevant to people viewing the video version of this show. But is there any chance you could give the folks at home a sneak peek of exactly what you're adorned in today?
Mate, I am not embarrassed at all. I will show the folks at home. Look.
There it is. When I saw that, for anyone who is listening to the audio version, it's sort of a miniaturized version of Master Chief. And my comment was like, "Oh, it's an Xbox mascot. That's not very you, Jonesy. A traditionally PlayStation guy." To which you pointed out that there's actually more to the size and stature of the Chief than I had first realized.
It also, you didn't even notice the first time. It also says sus.
It says sus, which I'm sure completes the picture for anyone wondering.
Yeah, for anyone listening, it is Master Chief, but it's in the Among Us style. So there you go. Anyone who's looking. It's
kind of like, it's insulting on a number of different levels, because not only is it the Among Us-ification of like an otherwise likable character, which much like the Funko Pop revolution has just ruined like so much of nostalgia I've got for great characters and great stories and great movies and games and so on and so forth, but also like to just have the word sus on a, like, what is that?
I like how much
you're wearing a hoodie that says the word sus on it.
I'll tell you what it is. I joined up to this like hoodie t-shirt like box thing where they say, oh, we send you a t-shirt and a hoodie. It's like I think it was 20 quid a month, and they're like, and every month we send you a t-shirt and a hoodie. Isn't that cool and quirky? And I was like, you know what? I'm so bad at buying clothes. Like, yeah, all right, let me hop on and do this thing. But it wasn't like a random cool thing that they just sent you and that they decided, which I thought it was. You basically pick it. So you're supposed to go on and choose it. But I'm like, well, if I'm choosing it, I could just go and buy one. Like, why am I bothering? So I didn't pick it for a couple of months, because I thought, well, they're going to pick one for me. And I was getting shortchanged. I was getting the crappiest of crap t-shirts and hoodies. So I had two that were the same design, one on a t-shirt, one on a hoodie, which was a Harry Potter crossed with Toy Story, the little aliens from Toy Story. It was really, and I'm like, that's crap. So then I logged on. I cancelled it, basically. But then I had one more to do before the cancel went through. And I saw this Master Chief Among Us one. And I thought it was pretty cool. And do you know what? I wore it to pick up my kid from school. And lots of the little children were like, Among Us, Among Us.
But that's not a good thing.
It's Among Us. And then I said, it's also Master Chief. And they went, who's Master Chief? And I was like,
that's so depressing. That's so depressing. Like, when I was about to say the generation before us, maybe it's partially your generation as well, got like a little bit miffed when the generations beneath them started referring to floppy disks as the save icon because they'd never seen a floppy disk before.
That is outrageous.
I agree.
The save icon.
But I now feel the same way, like when kids at your son's school recognize an Among Us character or understand the word sus. Which I get it, it's not that grand a word to understand.
They play Among Us in the playground.
Like, there was just a really good Halo game, 6 months ago.
It's a shame I couldn't play it because it was bust.
These kids are living in a bubble, and you need to wake them up, Jonesy. Wake them up with your hoodies. I will say also...
Are you Gen Z, or are you a millennial?
I'm a millennial, I think, technically. I mean, okay. I'm 30 next year, Jonesy. I'd love to...
Oh, of course.
I'd love to pretend I'm a young man, but...
You must be right on the cusp of millennial there. But do you know what I do think is quite funny? Because I like the way that the generations kind of get at each other these days. It does make me smile. And because millennials are old now, people think millennials are old and grumpy, and which is why they get called boomers. Ironically, because obviously boomers, I guess, aren't really online, so they're not around. I guess some of them are, but what's weird to me now is like the Generation Z or Gen Z who think they're like young and cool and hip. Like, there you go. Now, I realised the other day that's like, I don't think my kids are in that generation. I think they're in a generation after that generation. So my kids were born in end of the 20 teens. So I don't know if that's still Gen Z.
so either whatever generation it is, it's just scary to think about, like, children.
So they'll be coming up mad, like absolute psychos, like ripping Gen Z for being old, and like people do with me. I'm sure now that I'm a millennial, like an older millennial, which is so weird. It's very strange.
Oh, 100%.
I don't know what my kids are going to be into.
Like, I am a millennial and I'm 20 plus years older than your kids, and I still don't like the idea of being left behind. That's why I still play Fortnite every now and then. I've got to keep in touch. I've got to be, on the same level. I don't want to become that Steve Buscemi meme.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. You want to be down with the kids. Of course.
Yeah, absolutely. And Joan, I guess that's the thing I'm missing out on, right? Is more Among Us themed hoodies, which I will say, if you didn't get to see Jonesy's Among Us themed Master Chief hoodie in all its glory, it's probably because you're listening to the audio version of this podcast. If that is the case, that's absolutely fine. Hello, wherever you are. Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts. There's no shortage of places that you could be listening to the audio version of this product. But if you did want to check out both Jonesy and my faces and that incredible hoodie, not quite in the flesh, but as close as you're going to get virtually, then you can head over to YouTube at SuperShow Pods, or just type in the SuperShow Pod. I don't know, type something in, you'll find us. You can watch it. You can like the video, you can subscribe, you can leave a comment. If you want to do the social media thing, you can head over to Twitter at SuperShowPods, the handle. We don't tweet that often, but Chris does read the DMs. And speaking of Chris, he, as I'm sure the more alert, eagle-eyed viewers and listeners so far will have noticed, he's not here this week, Jonesy. But fortunately, we can say it's for good reason, because he's not dying or under a mountain of work or anything like that. He's just on holiday.
Yeah, the best reason to not be on the pod, I guess.
Literally. I don't know what Greek people do with, like, he's probably drinking tzatziki through a straw or something like that, putting his feet up.
Eating feta.
Yeah. Wearing sandals for whatever it is, 10 days straight. That's like the mark of a Chris J holiday for me, is like the sandals and or flip-flops don't leave his feet apart from when he goes to bed. No socks for 2 weeks
That's
straight.
any holiday, isn't it?
No, it's not.
I only wear flip-flops on holiday.
You're gross. I don't own a pair of flip-flops or sandals. That's not even an exaggeration. I don't own flip-flops, I don't own sandals, I don't own sunglasses, and I don't own a single hat, because I am prepped for this weather, the UK weather, all year round, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
But that surprises me, because I know that you're a guy who likes a beer in a pub garden and watching the football, so I'm surprised
Absolutely.
I'm surprised you don't own a hat in case it's sunny.
Nope. Do you know what? I've got all the attire I need for a beer in a pub garden to watch the football during the summer. I've got black jeans. I've got a black hoodie, which I often then put up as well, just to increase the amount of heat and sort of like, really increase the insulation. It's everything I need. No, I'm wearing. I've got my forearms out today. I don't do that every podcast, true. This is a once white t-shirt.
Was it?
Yeah, believe it or not, this t-shirt used to be white many moons ago.
It's now a lovely grey, so it looks like it's meant to be grey, to be fair. It doesn't look like it was once white.
I think that's why I've kept wearing it, because the discoloration or diswhitification hasn't been that...
Ooh.
Is that
what a good word, diswhitification. That sounds like something people want to do to the world.
It sounds like the opposite of what happened to Michael Jackson.
Yes.
His was just the regular whitification.
Right.
And speaking of people who are primed for UK weather all year round, Josie, I can't imagine that sentiment applies any more to anyone else than the good people of Scotland, including which you might find the owners and operators of Paisley Radio over at paisleyradio.com, and you can listen to this podcast over there Thursdays at 10 p.m. It's repeated on Mondays. That link, once again, paisleyradio.com, if you ever want to listen to us in a kind of online digital radio, pre-recorded after the fact, but also still streamed live format. That option is open to you. And with that, Jonesy, shall we not disappoint Chris any further by jumping right into some at least gaming tangentially related, like gaming adjacent chatter?
He would be proud that we got to it this quickly.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't keep time, because none of us do stopwatches like Chris does. But I'd imagine, like, we're early-ish. We're probably still inside the first 10 minutes, if not on the cusp. So not quite record time, but we're getting there.
We're pretty close. Hey, I think that the Among Us Halo talk right at the top would count.
Hey, exactly. I'm already ticking boxes that I didn't even know we were ticking. I wanted to start, actually, Jonesy, before we jump into the various bits and pieces of news and new things that have happened this weekend. We will be talking about the confirmation of the name for Dragon Age 4. We're going to be talking about the latest gameplay reveal, or the first gameplay reveal of Sonic Frontiers Open World. We're going to be talking about the new entry in the Star Wars Jedi series, and so on and so forth. But because it is the 2nd of June as we're recording this, it's the first podcast we've done in June, which means we are now officially in the calm before the storm, before the June onslaught of gaming streams and conferences and showcases and just news in general begins. I know, I'm celebrating too on the inside.
It's been so dry, Jamie. We've had nothing to talk about for weeks.
Well, Jonesy, the good news is the dryness ceases today, in fact. But I did just want to do a little bit of housekeeping on...
Is this like lube then? Is this like getting lubed up?
No, we're already lubed up. We're Rubberdon, lubed up, and she's there, legs akimbo. We're just waiting for the right moment. Like, we're doing a speech, a little. We're warming her up. Like, that's a normal thing to do, right?
Yeah, like a General Patton speech just before you get down to business.
Exactly, yeah. Or you just do your favourite speech from a movie, like a memorable speech from a movie, like a little monologue, just to really get her warmed up. Or him. Although men don't get warmed up in the same way.
I tweeted a movie quote last night from an intro to a film that I thoroughly enjoy, and I challenged people who follow me on Twitter, at SuperShow Jonesy. If you don't follow me on Twitter. And not many people, I think one person got what film it was from, actually. It's not a monologue.
Do you know the quote to heart? Can you say it without pulling up the tweet?
I can, but
okay.
I don't know if I should, because we might get the old the censors of the...
oh, shit.
Well, it's very sweary. So yeah, I'll say it. But
fuck it.
If you don't like swearing, I'm about to swear lots. So just be warned, because I don't know. Some people don't like cursing and swearing, do they? The line is also, I don't know. I think my
you're listening
are
up with children.
My wife is just coming down the stairs, which means my kids are asleep. The line is, "Shut that cunt's mouth before I come over there and start her head." Wow.
Okay. Yeah, that is strong. Not too bad on the cursing meter. I think that's just to it. But also, like, I can imagine the sort of the body language of the speaker might also... It's sending a very particular message.
It is, and it's such a great... It's from the intro of Way of the Gun. Ryan Phillippe, Benicio del Toro, Sarah Silverman, I think it's Taye Diggs. Like, there's so many famous people in that movie, and it is wicked. If you haven't seen it, you should check it out. But the intro is one of my favourite intros of all time. I think the intro of Thursday is another intro that I thoroughly enjoy.
Do you want to know something funny? I was gonna bring up Thursday because Thursday and Way of the Gun are two of the most like Jonesy movies of all the Jonesy movies, because they're weirdly obscure as well. Like nowadays,
they are, yeah.
Like movies that could have picked up a cult following, but kind of just didn't.
Yeah, no, Thursday, because as well, like even now, like looking back now, like Thomas Jane, Aaron Eckhart, and who's the guy, the boxer guy? Who's in The Wrestler?
Mickey Rourke.
Mickey Rourke are all in Thursday. So those films are packed with like amazing actors, like very famous people, but they just don't have... Not many people have seen them. Thursday is really hard to get hold of. If you want to try and buy that on Blu-ray, you cannot, or DVD, you can't get it. I bought it for a mate of mine. I think I had to buy it from Norway or from Sweden or something and get it imported.
Those bloody Scandies.
Yeah, very good though, very good. You get a chance.
Maybe that's the homework for this week, is if the folks at home try and get their hands on, and we're not going to say whether it has to be done legally or that's, what you do in your business and your spare time is up to you, but try and get your hands on either Thursday and or Way of the Gun, and then Jonesy will finally have someone to talk to about the two things he's most passionate about in life. Yeah,
absolutely. Sorry, I've derailed us again. Let's get back to the game.
Not at all. I can't even remember like how we got onto that, but what I was going to say is that just a little bit of a structural information, because as people will be listening to this podcast from Friday onwards, Friday the 3rd, Sony and PlayStation will have kickstarted not just the sort of E3-ish, June-ish thing that's going on, but in fact Summer Games Fest itself, with a State of Play live stream that is happening later tonight as of time of recording. And I will say, interesting note there, officially a part of Summer Games Fest, because Sony did start promoting it this week with the Summer Games Fest logo in the corner. I thought that was a kind of slightly interesting change for Sony, who were usually a little bit sort of hands-off, especially when it was still E3 and Keighley wasn't even on the scene. Sony very much kind of wanted to do their own thing. So I thought that was interesting. But in order to not be completely behind, and because essentially this time next week it's going to be the Summer Games Fest, and so it's this weird thing of if we set a precedent of recording to every event the week after, then we would be 8 days late to every single event for the entire of a summer. So what we are going to do is we're going to record, we're going to chat about that news that I mentioned earlier, and at the end of this podcast, you will see us in the smoothest transition of all time, no doubt, return to talk about the state of play. So we will have our reactions to that, but what I'm saying is if Sony just did the most unbelievable thing, if Final Fantasy XVI looks amazing, if Resident Evil 4 Remake got announced, if God of War Ragnarok has a release date, and we're not, falling over each other to discuss it in the early stages of the podcast, that's why. Because we're in the past and you're in your present. But soon, we're going to be a part of your future.
Yes, so stick with us to the end is what Jamie's saying, and you'll hear our reaction to the state of play.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it, Jonesy. Like you're as your fist pumping earlier would have suggested, it's going to be a really fun month. And with whatever happens with the state of play, I think next week as well with the Summer Games Fest show with Xbox, there's been hints this week that Kojima might be up to something. Look, I feel like the amount of times we've said in this podcast, Kojima's up to his old tricks must be running in the thousands now. But he's been tweeting some weird things, including just a very cryptic image of a clock. There have also been some images of Jeff Keighley and Hideo Kojima communicating, whether they were planning something or rehearsing something, who knows, I wouldn't want to speculate. But things should be happening this month. And that's cool, right? That's always good.
That is very, very cool. This has become like the best sort of 2 months in the gaming calendar, obviously with Game Fest, Summer Game Fest coming in. And because I think now that everyone kind of waits for it, when it was E3, it didn't even seem as dry as it does nowadays leading up to Summer Game Fest. And I guess that's because it's a longer period of time, so people maybe delay things just a little bit and they can fall into that slot. But no, it's now a great sort of I'm gonna say it's about 2 months, isn't it? You get like the main month and then you get all the dregs and dribs from the like these smaller indies and stuff who push stuff out a little bit later. So even after Summer Game Fest finishes, you've still got news coming in like almost weekly for a while. So
right, and then
June and July, epic.
Even the outliers of Sony have shown a preference towards September in the past, which in those cases it almost makes it a 3-month ordeal, which I know some people don't like because it feels a bit too drawn out. I get that, but it's news, It's more than we've had for the last few weeks. Although, would it surprise you, Jonesy, with all the chats we've had about them as a company in recent weeks and the lack of a grip it seems like they've got on what they're making and when they're making it and how and when they're releasing it, as illustrated by the video game Roller Champions, which, for anyone who missed it, is in fact now out. And I don't know a single soul on planet Earth who even knows that fact, let alone has played it. Ubisoft.
Well, we mentioned it, didn't we? We were talking about it.
We mentioned it when they gave it a surprise release date. I haven't heard a single mention of it since it actually came out, which it has done.
Me either.
Crazy. So what I was going to say is, would you be surprised here, Jonesy, that Ubisoft are not planning an E3 style show, and we are not going to hear from them until later on in the year?
I'm not surprised. I don't know what the hell they're doing these days. They do seem like they don't know where they're going, what they're up to, like what's going on. Like it's just been super weird. So yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah,
I'm sad because Ubisoft, they're one of those companies that have such a good pedigree, and so I'd love them to get back into a really good state and to sort of be like, yeah, we're coming with a really great show and we're going to be there, during this Summer Game Fest. But if they're not there,
yeah, I guess one of those things of like, don't show us anything until you're ready to show us anything. It does seem weird when they've got so many irons in the fire and all these projects that seem to be at various stages of ready to come out, but do you know what? It's fine. They'll probably pop up in September. They'll show us more gameplay of that Avatar thing, and that's probably going to be 2022 in a nutshell for Ubisoft. One company that was almost on a similar trajectory, but used an adjacent sort of gathering of fans and commotion to announce a project they've got coming up is EA, Jonesy, because of course EA have confirmed that there won't be an EA Play this year, but they did piggyback on the recently held Star Wars Celebration to announce the biggest title that they have coming up in the next, let's say the next 12 months presumably, that had yet to be formally revealed, and that is Star Wars Jedi Survivor, a sequel to a game that you finished very, very recently, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Announced for 2023, we got a cinematic trailer. What you were saying to me earlier that, naturally, kind of carrying on from finishing Fallen Order straight into this, a little bit of hype.
Yeah, for sure. So I kind of fell off Fallen Order in a because of the gameplay loop that I was in and the region I was in. I wasn't quite as invested as I had been in the earlier game. But when I got back onto it, it all went sort of much more in the direction that I was keen on, which was like fighting stormtroopers and like Darth Vader appears, and it gets much more back into like the Jedi lore, and you get all this cool stuff going on. So yeah, finished that game a few weeks ago, and now, or a couple of weeks ago, and was really hyped to like keep playing more of that. And obviously, one of the things that made me want to jump back on that was all the Star Wars stuff that's been coming out recently, like Obi-Wan Kenobi, even down to like Mandalorian, which I hadn't even finished. I've only just finished season 2 of Mandalorian a few weeks ago. And that is that game, whilst it's not some areas of it aren't exactly the sort of game I like to play, because it is a bit more from softy than I'm sort of keen on. But when you tie, you've got Respawn making it, and it's got all of the Star Warsy elements to it as well. Like there's a lot more to sort of keep me playing a from softy style game. And I did really enjoy it, and getting back into it, yeah, really enjoyed it, and was just keen for more. So we knew that this was coming, but to see the cinematic trailer and to sort of see the maybe the bit of the direction they're going in, was very, very, very needed for me, and especially the 2023 release date. I'm hyped. Like, yes, I haven't got to wait too long.
Exactly.
I've got to wait till God knows when.
I wonder if that would be a nice little Q1 spot as well, like a little sort of a February or March or an April joint.
It feels like a bit of a Feb joint, doesn't it?
Yeah, I can get behind that. A bit of Feb magic. So yeah, to pick up on some of the Star Warsy stuff that you mentioned there, and kind of how they're positioning this game and what they said about it so far. Unsurprisingly, they've described it as a third-person, narrative-driven action-adventure title that picks up 5 years after the events of the original game. That's probably more or less, in spite of the Soulsborne elements that you mentioned there, I'd imagine that's how they described the first game, so that doesn't sound like a huge departure in terms of, the gameplay or kind of how the game might feel or play. Trusty sidekick BD1 returns. Of course, protagonist Cal Kestis is still in the hot seat. He is now one of the last remaining Jedi in the galaxy, and he must acquire new skills and grow his connection with the Force to stay one step ahead of the Empire's constant pursuit. If you ask me whether or not you were describing Jedi Survivor or Jedi Fallen Order, I wouldn't know, because that's kind of how I remember the first game. One of the last remaining Jedi has to acquire new skills and grow his connection with the Force to escape the Empire's constant pursuit, but I'm sure they'll find new ways to put a spin on it. And they will do so by leveraging advanced technology to create more dynamic Jedi combat and cinematic storytelling to expand on Cal's story as he matures and survives during the dark times. And the reason I wanted to pick up on that, Jonesy, is because before we started recording, you kind of joked to me that in spite of how much you liked Jedi Fallen Order, going back to finishing it and were excited for this latest entry, that you would probably be more in favour of significant changes to that gameplay formula than others fans might be, as a result of not necessarily loving its adherence to some of those Soulsborne principles. Am I overthinking it? Or when I read more advanced technology to create more dynamic Jedi combat, that doesn't sound like the kind of way you'd hype up the next iteration of a combat system based on Soulsborne style ideologies, where that is kind of, I wouldn't say that Soulsborne games are stiff, and I think Sekiro and Elden Ring have shown that they can in fact be very fluid and dynamic and have, lots of things going on, but it still, for me, at the core, has always had those principles of like, it's about patience and it's about animations and knowing like how long things are going to take to do, or for both for you and an opponent, and when to make your move and timing and stuff like that. And I don't know, the idea of lightsaber combat becoming more dynamic while still being within that Soulsborne frame.
It's a strange one, because one of the things, especially toward the end stage of the game, I think Fallen Order became a game of two halves. It was a sense of, you have like the FromSoft boss battle style fights where it's all about rolling out of the way of an attack, learning their patterns, knowing when they're going to do an unblockable attack. Which are the elements that I don't enjoy as much, I must admit.
Right.
But that was married with very fluid combat, and especially with the force powers, you feel like a badass going around taking out stormtroopers with one hit, and it's about closing distance, and it almost feels more like a Shadow of Mordor or a Batman Arkham game in some sense.
Okay.
You're closing distance, you're dispatching groups of enemies. not just one person. I prefer that combat. I think that combat is much better for a Jedi sort of style game. I do like the boss battles, but this to me suggests that they are going to be maybe preferencing the larger groups, more dynamic fighting, but in that style, as opposed to more of the boss battles where you're just timing and you're rolling out the way and you're trying to like gauge what they're doing. Because I think they kind of nailed that. I don't see how, unless they're sort of talking about dynamic as in like, introducing elements of scenery and different things coming into the battle.
Yeah.
But so this kind of makes me feel good about the game, as if maybe they're going to bring more of those elements in. Because I'm like the final sort of level where you're fighting groups of stormtroopers, you're force pushing and pulling and throwing them around and chopping them in half. Like, I love all of that. And when it's you 1v1 against the boss, and you're sort of looking at his health bar and you're hammering him, and then I just don't enjoy that. So this kind of gives me pause to say, oh, actually, maybe they're going more in the way that I'd want. Still a fantastic game. I still thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm glad I went back to it. I'm glad I finished it. But there's also a weird thing with FromSoft games that I often, because of when maybe they preference like bigger bosses or bigger enemies, there are fewer of them, which always makes the games feel a little bit more empty. And I definitely got that a bit from Fallen Order. It was a lot of walking around like wild environments in the wilderness, fighting the occasional animal and like a group of enemies, but then it was kind of empty again. Again, if they're saying more dynamic Jedi combat, maybe that suggests that they're going to have some more built up areas, some more like small villagey areas, maybe small city areas where you're going to get to do some more, force powers. Maybe lightning. Maybe he turns a bit evil and he gets some Sith powers on the go as well.
I have one request on the Force power side of things. It's never going to happen, but all I want is some Force Unleashed style telekinesis. I want to like grab pick a stormtrooper up and like dangle him from his ankle and then slam him into the ground, then slam him into the ceiling, then slam him into a wall and then drop him on his head. No, not drop him on his head. Position him on top of another dead stormtrooper so it looks like they're bumming.
Do you know what? I loved that about Force Unleashed. I thought that was one of the best things about that game. But even in the end of Fallen Order, though, you could do just like the walking up to it, like 2 or 3 stormtroopers were like, "He's over here," and then you could just go, and then they will just go flying off a cliff. And it's brilliant. Like I think that is cool. And then you say to me, "Do you want to do that, or do you want to do some FromSoft boss battle style?" I'm like, "No, let me just push stormtroopers off of a cliff." Like I prefer that.
And we were
discussing. If I had to pick.
No, I get that, of course, and like we were discussing before we started recording, the idea that, and don't get me wrong, it's not that radical or sort of groundbreaking a concept, but obviously one of the things that's great about sequels like this, when a studio goes out of their way to not develop a new IP in this case, obviously Star Wars very well known, but certainly go out on a new tangent and create a new series and say, hey, here's a new thing within our wheelhouse as Respawn Entertainment. This is a new thing we do, and when EA greenlights a sequel to that, then they have the capacity to take all the work they did on Jedi Fallen Order and build on that. So obviously things will change, and there will be new animations that are added to but just certain things like where might only need tweaking, whether that's certain animation sets or certain the appearance or the visuals of certain things, and how they like enemies and move sets and AI and just all like so many things that they can build on as opposed to having to do from scratch as you might have to with a newer title. Hopefully that does open the door for a much bigger scale and scope of sequel. And kind of as you mentioned there, like it's hard for me to imagine this game like having an environment that is akin to a city. Like I don't think Cal Kestis is ever going to be running around a kind of anything resembling a kind of living or breathing world and like NPCs go like I don't think they're going to go in that direction. But
no, but I think they could take like an area of a city. Do you know what I mean? They could have like a slightly more populated sort of I agree with you. It wouldn't be like an open world kind of thing going on. But I think they almost teased it in Fallen Order, where they had some areas that were more like, oh, this could have been a little more populated.
Yeah, the area that you escape at the very beginning of the game, where like you only ever see snippets of it, but you are essentially almost leaving a city, and there's that big train scene, and
yes. So I think they could push that sort of a little bit more. But yeah, I suppose they are limited because it's not an open world game. It's not like a bloody cyberpunk meets like lightsabers. So.
Prey 2 meets Jedi Fallen. Yeah, no, exactly.
I kind of hope they move away from the Metroidvania thing as well. They're not going to. Like there's
Yeah.
no way they will now. But it's fine. I mean, I guess it's fine. But
Yeah, I think like it's an adherence to those principles that I agree. I don't think they're going to get away from, at least not dramatically. That kind of defines what some of the locations are going to be like and how they have to be built. And a lot of them have to be designed in such a way where like you might go there one time and there's like kind of an A route for story purposes and there's a B route maybe for other story purposes, or there's a way in and there's a way out, but there's things you can explore over here and there's a puzzle over there and there's collectibles over there. And again, in classic sequel fashion, I can see them doubling down on the amount of things there are to do and or find off the beaten track. Maybe not in the way of, explicit side quests, but perhaps more than just sort of like, additional cosmetic rewards like lightsaber handles or whatever it was in the first game. Like I could see them trying to beef that up a bit more. So it's not just, those sort of very slight cosmetic tweaks that you're earning.
I'd agree with you. Side quest would be a nice touch. Just some reason for you to go back to a planet with when you're more powered up that seems more in keeping with like Jedi lore or something. You're going to help someone do this, or you're going to go and find this, you're going to do that. Just to move away a little bit from the, I'm just going to go now and go to that planet because it says I'm only 65% completed and I'll go there and run around till I found the box. Like if there was an impetus for going there, something like that would work. And I think you're right. I think side quests would be a quite good way of doing that. Because even like the latest Metroid game did quite a good job of giving you reason to go backtracking. It kind of said, now the world's changed and you need to go back and you need to go through this area again and look at it maybe in a different way. So maybe they need to do something like that. But hey, they've said more cinematic storytelling, and maybe there will be more of those.
Maybe. Yeah, the last thing I'd love to see, just to mention it before we move on, is something that I actually thought was slightly off with Jedi Fallen Order from the very first time they revealed gameplay, which is that I think they never quite got whether it was the animations or just the general fluidity of traversal down in a way that I expected from Respawn, because obviously we were watching the Jedi Fallen Order reveal off the back of Titanfall 2, which, again, from a first-person perspective, but, the movement within Titanfall 2 was so tight and felt so good to do that they could build entire platforming sequences within the single-player component of that game that, in spite of being a first-person shooter, and like we talked in the past about how in games like Doom and Doom Eternal, we've disagreed on the relevance or the place of platforming sequences within FPS games. Like in Titanfall 2, there's no questioning it. And when you're sort of running those gauntlets of like wall jumping and double jumping and timing things, but like it felt so good. And I felt like while they did try and get some elements like wall running was involved in Jedi Fallen Order, there was something about the movement speed and the fluidity of Cal Kestis as a protagonist that never got to those Titanfall 2 heights, which I know is a very high bar, don't get me wrong. But I'd love to see them take more inspiration from third-person action and adventure games that have had like that their traversal has been a little bit more on point, and I can't think of any real.
I'd agree with you. I think there was sometimes there was maybe a bit of a floatiness to it that they could have sorted out. One pet peeve of mine was anytime you like slipped down. They'd go, now you're going to slide down this endless sort of slippery slope or tree branch or something, and it always felt super janky. And I think in a few occasions, I just ended up dying in those sections for like jumping where I'm supposed to jump, and it would just glitch out and kill me. And I was like, what? And then it would put you back into the same slope. And I'm like, they haven't quite nailed this particular element of this.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think what's funny about that is I think as a first game, excuse me, I think they absolutely set the groundwork to say that the only way they're going to go from there is up, and I think it was already very good. So I'd be surprised if they didn't nail it sort of second time round.
I mean, it's Respawn, right? So that bodes well. I mean, things can go wrong. CD Projekt Red, blah 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 blah. But optimistic for now. One last question. I saw a rumor this week that Darth Maul could be in this. Who would you want to see from the expanded Star Wars universe make a surprise appearance, assuming in a Darth Vader-esque fashion that it was handled appropriately?
Do you know what? I'm gonna go with if the timelines match up, because I'm not
going to be the person who's able to question you on that, so don't worry. The comments will do that.
The timelines would not match up, but I would say Mandalorian.
Okay, cool.
they do it because they had Order 66 happens in Fallen Order, and Mando meets Luke Skywalker when he's become a Jedi. No, yeah, it doesn't match up, does it? Because
What about whoever's alive out of Boba Fett and Jango Fett?
Jango Fett. It would be Jango Fett.
Would you settle for them?
No, they've undone it because the book Boba Fett's still alive, isn't he?
I haven't watched any of those shows.
Sorry, not Jango. Jango's the dad. So Jango's dead. Boba Fett.
Is Jango the dad? Huh.
Yeah, Jango's the dad. Boba Fett is supposed to be dead because he died in the desert, but you'd find out that he didn't die because he turns up in Mandalorian and he is in obviously Book of Boba Fett, so he survived.
Yeah, gets his own show.
So I can't remember how the timelines work.
Oh, fun.
They would still be alive. Actually, that's not even right because Mandalorian would be alive because he was a kid and then he was a Mandalorian and then I'm sure there are years when there was crossover. So I'm sure it'll be fine. Mandalorian, there you go. Mandalorian.
Okay, and you could do all kinds of funky stuff because I think even saying Darth Maul, like that's a dude who got chopped in half and fell down a bottomless pit and still came back. So, albeit with spider legs, I think. I don't know if they retcon that.
Did he come back?
Yeah, I think that's the whole point. Is Darth Maul's like there's a whole thing. I can't remember. It's in one of the animated shows, but like Darth Maul goes on to be like a really significant character post Phantom Menace because he comes back and they build him legs, the robotic legs, the spider legs. And that's why he's in. Did you? This is now crazy spoiler territory. I'm sorry, but did you ever see Solo, the standalone?
Yes.
Well, Darth Maul's in that. He's the hologram of Darth Maul. Speaks to whoever it is.
Oh, I haven't seen it since it came out. I've forgotten about that.
Yeah,
there you go.
Basically, Darth Maul's knocking around. They were like, this guy looks too cool to just die.
Well, so his planet is in Fallen Order as well. That's the area that I wasn't that keen on. Was like the brothers.
Oh, right,
the Night Brothers, I think they're called. And you end up fighting the Jedi who kind of makes them become bad whatever dudes they are. Like
he's the boss fight at the end of that area. He takes his shirt off or his top.
Yeah, he loves getting his shirt off, and he's got two lightsabers.
Yeah, I remembered that one. Right, I think we probably filled our Star Wars quota for this week. So promise me you're not going to mention anything Star Wars or Star Wars related for the rest of the podcast, Jonesy.
I can't do that.
Yeah, I'm teasing you, I know.
I will say I'm not going to mention Lego Star Wars, though, because I know people get annoyed about that.
Okay, and to be fair, I do want to hear about what we've got to talk about coming up. But before we get there, I want to throw in a little comment of the week, because this one caught our eye from David Walmer Jr. Talk about someone who's not afraid to just say what they think and go against the grain, Jonesy. How about this? Personally, Skyrim is hands down the most overrated game I've ever played. The feeling of jank pervades every aspect of it, brackets especially the melee combat and character facial animations, and the open world is boring with a capital F. And what I love about that especially is there is no F in boring. No,
that's very good.
I feel like David is not only trying to maybe generate a little bit of conversation, a little bit of intrigue amongst other commenters and onlookers, but also trying to appeal to your good nature, Jonesy, because in your mind, let's not forget, after last week's discussion, Skyrim is the most simple building block, compound simplicity, open world RPG of all time.
Everything is compound simplicity. The most complex things in the entire universe are compound simplicity. So don't give me that. Anyway, no. I get where he's coming from. Like, there is a thing that is a well-known thing with Bethesda that their games are janky, because in order to build such big worlds with like that much story going on, there's gonna be some jank. Like, you're always gonna get it. If you want a really well-cultivated story that has no jank, you have to have a game like Call of Duty or something like that, where everything is prescribed and it's like, super linear, like the older sort of Call of Duty games. If you're going to have an open world, you're going to have jank in it somewhere, purely because like it's more complicated. I think Bethesda, though, people understand that the jank and the enjoyment are two things that kind of go together. But hey, if he had a bad time with some of the melee combat and that, I'm not gonna sort of get annoyed with him. It's to each their own.
I guess that's the kind of the defense David's got, is that his comment does start with personally, which means we can't necessarily tell him. I will say for my money that Skyrim is not the most overrated game I've ever played, nor did I think the feeling of jank kind of bled into everything. but you're absolutely right that jank goes hand in hand with Bethesda open world RPGs, and it's been better in some cases and worse in others, and the extent to which people are able to overlook it to focus on a game's stronger attributes has long defined what you think of those games. Classic case in point for me is Fallout New Vegas, which from my experiences was one of the more buggy and janky Bethesda, well, it was obviously Obsidian, but Bethesda published, let's say, open world games that I played at the time. And, in the years since, I've grown to realise that people absolutely adored that game's story and setting and so on and so forth in a way that I never really saw. So there is a to each their own element to here.
I think gaming is all about finding elements that you enjoy, and games, especially when the things that you enjoy a lot, and the things that you don't really care for don't really bother you. So you might have a game which other people love, but you can't get over one tiny aspect of it because you just don't like the way that you might not like the score, you might not like the sound effects, and you think that makes the game crap, or you might not like the combat, and that makes it really bad. But if you don't care about those things, you might play the same game and you might have a completely different experience. And I think Bethesda embody that like through and through. If you like games that are sprawling open worlds with like engaging stories and loads of different threads and narratives, I completely understand why people fall in love with those games and play them
totally
non-stop. And similarly, like FromSoft games, I cannot get into the main core of FromSoft games, no matter how hard I try, because I don't enjoy the most enjoyable elements of those games that people enjoy about them. I find them, to be the things that I'm not that into in games. So, I think exactly personally, as he said, as David Warmer said, personally, it's all about the personal game.
We're going to find that out the hard way later in this podcast when we record a reaction to that state of play, complaining about it all being Final Fantasy or anime bullshit without Chris here to set us right. And then we'll wake up in the morning to find out it was actually the best state of play of all time.
Yes.
Oops.
Honestly, but I like that as well. I like it when you see something and you go, that was crap, and some other people go, oh no, it was great. And you're like, what were you watching? Because I don't think I was watching the same thing.
Yeah.
And you could just... So I've actually played a little bit. I started to play Red Dead Redemption 2 again recently.
Fantastic game.
A fantastic game in so many ways. There is jank in that game. Like the movement, for example, is a bit janky. Like some of those ways he moves and interacts with things isn't as slick as a lot of other games, but the game on the whole is absolutely bloody fantastic. And so I think you allow element, because the way they made that game is they had to make it in that way. It's not like they made it on purpose, like be a bit janky. They made it like that because in 90% of the time, the movement works for the game, and sometimes it, maybe it slips off here and there. But
does it? Okay.
Oh, come on, man! It does. If you try and walk up, if you try and get into a gunfight with people while you're near some stairs, and you just can't start sliding up and down, and you can't climb a step, and you get a bit stuck, and you're like, "What is this game doing?" But
it could be that you're right. It could also be that you're wrong, and you're talking about a perfect video game. But
it could be. But like I said, 90% of that game, the movement for that is perfect because it makes it has weight, it has heft. The walking looks fantastic. The way that you move around that world fits, and you wouldn't want someone who was like floaty, running on top of the land and didn't seem to be part of it, even if that meant you had more fluid movement in other parts of the game. So, engines and games and stuff are developed and designed in certain ways.
Yeah, and in the case of Red Dead Redemption 2, that was a game that was developed to be one of the best games of all time, and I think hats off to Rockstar, mission accomplished as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
We talk about a jank-free, perfect experience.
To be fair, jank is not the right word for that. I don't know what I'd call it, but I suppose it wouldn't be jank.
Yeah. Well, Jonesy, you know what else has a jank-free, perfect experience? It's the SuperShow podcast, and that is probably why so many people have seen fit to support the growth and the continuation of the SuperShow podcast by giving us money on Patreon. Because if you head over to patreon.com/SuperShow, you will see that we are opening our doors to you, the folks at home, to lend us your support in a monetary form so that we can keep going, keep recording podcasts, and keep producing other fun bits and pieces of content along the way. That link again is patreon.com/SuperShow. And if you head over there and take a little look around, what you'll find is there are different tiers that await you, different tiers corresponding to different pledges that one can make. For example, if you pay $2 a month, you'll get access to our private Discord server. At $5 a month and $10 a month, you'll find access to different kinds of content that we have produced exclusively for patrons. There's, Patreon Patreon-exclusive podcasts, there's spoiler casts, there's old content from the all-time gaming vault that never saw the light of day. And I believe, if all goes to plan, there will be an additional piece of Patreon-exclusive content hitting in the next couple of days as we're recording this, because whilst you listen to this podcast now will be able to hear us give our summary and thoughts on the PlayStation State of Play after it has happened and after we have consumed and digested all it has to offer, we are also planning on recording a live watch-along on the State of Play. So if you ever felt like you wanted to watch something like that along with us and see our live jaws as they drop and hit the floor as some game that we're not that excited about gets announced, but we're pretending to be excited about it because it's YouTube and entertainment, then you can do that, and that'll be on one of those tiers. For example, yes. So with that, I do want to give a quick shout out actually to the people who are already supporting us on Patreon, because Lord knows they are making all the difference. There are some names on screen right now, and I also want to give some personal shout outs to Aaron Cameron, Athletic Gravy, Bill Caesar, Brimstone, Cole K, Icenaut Rock Salt, Jesper Camdell Nielsen, Leo Merger, Mindful Pig, Mr. Anthropic, Nathan Pears, Neil, Dugel's Dream of Prosthetic Mustaches Daniel, Pastors Guild, Scary Omen, The Ballless Beauty, The Gorgeous Gelding, The Yummy Eunuch, the one and only Mark Clancy, and the big dogs, the head honchos, Bretzy, aka Shellshock, Doppler, Geometric Potter, Hacksaw Book Read, Manuel Guerrero, Peaswad, and Magna, may your cock never burn, Mikkelsen. Thank you all ever so much for your support, for your generosity. Genuinely, although I sometimes find it a little bit weird and uncomfortable to talk about the idea of people pledging or donating money so that we continue producing this thing, which is usually why I resort to some kind of weird self-deprecating humour around the whole thing. Genuinely, it makes a massive difference. And point blank, we would not still be doing this if it weren't for the support that so many of you have seen fit to give us over the last 2+ years now, Jonesy.
Is a very long time. No, thank you so much, everybody who supports us. Thank you, if you support us on Patreon, and even if you just watch this, drop a comment below, like it, whatever, share it, subscribe to the channel. Thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you. Before we get into some news, Jonesy, and I feel like I've said that sentence about 6 times already this podcast, let's talk a little bit about what we've been playing. Let's catch up on our last week, our last 7 days in multimedia. And if you don't mind, I'll jump the gun here and go first, because I think I've actually got a little bit less to talk about than you. That is because all I've really been playing in the past week is V Rising, which is the hot new survival, crafting, action-adventure kind of Diablo-inspired game that is sort of, I'm not going to say taken the internet by storm over the last couple of weeks, but it has been something of a breakout success that, you know, many people are drawing parallels to the likes of Valheim when that was an early hit, I think, in the in early stages of last year, for example. It has now, at the time of recording, I'm sure it's fast approaching 2 million sales. I know they hit the 1 and then the 1.5 million sales mark not that long ago, which again, for an independently produced and published game, from a developer that they have made something before, but I think it was a bit of a weird, I think it was like a MOBA then that they abandoned, bit of a weird story, something like that. But yeah, a bit of one of those sort of breakout Steam success stories. We got sent a key, so thought it would be fun to kind of check it out and see what it's all about. And thankfully I was joined by our old friend Steph Murphy, who joined me in as well. We ventured into the forests as vampires, as the V in the name would suggest, to basically do everything that you thought you might be doing in a game with such a genre. Stop me if this sounds familiar, Jonesy. I hit trees, and those trees gave me wood. And when I hit rocks, I got rock. And when I hit copper veins, I got copper. And I eventually started building a base where I could put down various tools and workbenches and so on and so forth that would allow me to refine some of these raw natural elements into other elements that could then be used. For example, would you be surprised to hear that I mined some copper ore, turned it into copper ingots, and then used those copper ingots to make copper weaponry?
I think I've heard this story before.
Yeah.
I didn't realise that you got to sort of build bases and stuff, and that there was sort of crafting involved.
Yeah.
I thought it was much more in the line of oh god, I don't even know. I think you even mentioned it already. I thought it was more in the line. No, I thought it was more in the sense of a Shit, what is the
Diablo.
Diablo? That was the one.
Well, yeah, I'll get to that. I think that's because, like, at its core, when you look at what V-Rising is doing and how it's going to keep you engaged over the course of, say, like a 20, 30, 40, 50 hours, that's where the more Diablo-like elements come into it.
Right.
I think so I've only played 3 hours of V-Rising, and I guess I wanted to flag, albeit with a slightly unhelpful, sarcastic tone thus far, is that unsurprisingly, the early stages of this survival/crafting game focus on survival and crafting.
Right.
And yeah, like it's kind of got this weird. It's not expressly multiplayer. It's kind of like server based, and so you can join other servers or you can like rent servers, but then you can also host sort of not you can host like servers for only people you know, but then when they join your world, even if you're part of the same clan, you're not expressly working together. Like, you kind of still have to complete objectives individually, and your inventory is not shared in any real way. So it is this sort of somewhat independent experience, and I think that's designed so people can kind of take characters and builds, and when I mention builds, it probably gives you an idea of like where this is all heading, into other worlds and other servers and so on and so forth, and kind of grow things out that way. And I think the reason that makes sense is, again, because once you've kind of wrapped your head around the fact of like you're mining and for these raw resources, and you're using them to build more useful tools and tools that allow you to do the things you're already doing but faster. You're also like coming across some NPCs, and you're learning that, you know, the ropes of a few new systems. Like, there's a kind of a blood system where, as a vampire, you need to feed on blood, and your pool of blood is constantly going down. But there are different types of blood and different strengths of blood and different ways for you to use blood.
Can you eat people? Can you eat NPCs?
Yes.
Nice.
You can feed on everything in the game apart from skeletons. I think if a thing's got blood, you can feed on it. So that goes for like deer and wolves, all the way to human enemies. To, I'm sure there are other bigger baddie things that you can feed on. What was I going to say? Yeah, like those were the early stages of the game, and learning the ropes about some of that stuff. But also, while this is all playing out, as you said, this is a Diablo-style game with an isometric perspective and Diablo-style combat, and even from the word go, you have a couple of abilities that are kind of hotkeyed in a similar way to Diablo, and you can flick through and you start to see, okay, there are skill trees and there's different things going on here. And the way it kind of boils down, I feel like the way I described it to myself is that it's like when you realise Terraria, when the way that game differentiated itself from Minecraft was saying, okay, actually there are loads of bosses in this world, and you're constantly trying to improve your character and your gear and your build, in this case, to take on those bosses. That is also going on in the background of V-Rising, where there are a long list and a large amount of bosses, each of them that have like abilities and so on and so forth tied to them, and so you're constantly trying to improve yourself and your base and your gear and your build, I guess, to be able to take on harder and harder challenges. And the more you go in that direction, the more Diablo-like and broad and customizable the combat system becomes. And I think that's what's really getting its hooks into people.
Does it have a similar loop to Diablo, whereby you can increase the difficulty level and you can get better gear, etc.?
Not really. The way it handles that is that essentially you have a gear level that is determined by the equipment you're actively wearing. So again, as you're building better stuff and equipping better stuff, your gear level is going up, and that's going to enable you to be strengthened enough to take on harder and harder opponents. So I've already come across in the open world enemies that have a skull next to their health bar rather than a level, as I would say, hey, if you try and fight this thing, you'll probably die. And so you run away from them and like you go off and do something else. It's just
that's novel. That's really novel, because Diablo 3 decided to do something where you didn't have that and you were just invincible in the game. Well, really boring.
This isn't a Diablo game though. And I know you're just trying to slag off Diablo 3 to piss me off. It's not going to work. I'm not biting. This is a crafting survival game. This is a game where you're going to...
Okay, cool.
When you're 4 hours into this game, you're going to have a chest that is labelled wood, and when you open that chest, you're going to have 17 stacks of 1,000 wood because you hit that many trees. It is one of those games. It's just also a game with a really interesting Diablo-like isometric perspective combat system with, again, skill trees and builds and a wide range of gear and a good enough sort of like breadth and volume of content that, in spite of the fact that this is a new game in early access, clearly it is getting its hooks into people. I personally need to play more than 3 hours of it.
I tell you what's quite funny is you've described it, and it makes me want to play it. Yeah, the more we've got away from the fact that it's not like Diablo. It's got Diablo combat elements. I'm like, okay, it sounds pretty good. But
Right.
it's crafting. I'm like, yeah, this sounds. Can
'Cause-
you build a like a Dracula style castle?
Yes.
Oh, I'm in.
So basically, the
I'm
way
in.
the way it introduces the base building is that, because again, it's kind of got that isometric perspective. Is you kind of you buy squares that become your like territory, and when something's your territory, you can build anything on it.
Right.
And in the early stages, when it's all driven by tutorials, you're basically just collecting wood and you're building these like basic wooden walls and putting everything down. As you progress through the game, you unlock the ability to either research more bit things that can be built, or just unlock more things that you can build. And I haven't built anything yet, but I've just got to the stage where I can put down like stone walls and a stone floor, and some of the architecture is very kind of gothic in a sort of a vampire style way. And I believe there have been references to the word castle. Just haven't built one yet. And when I see like late game gameplay, I'd see people who have built these pretty grand bases where like it actually gets to the point where you're meant to use walls to break things up into different rooms, and different rooms are meant to have different purposes, and actually certain things you might have to interact with. Like there's a sawmill that turns wood into planks, and planks can be used for but it's like, oh, if you put this in its own designated room, then it actually gets a buff. It works 25% faster.
Oh, okay.
So there is an idea where you're also being incentivized to kind of manage your space and manage where you're putting things. And again, like, yeah, you're using the backdrop of this sort of somewhat traditional, Minecraft, like, knock things down, gather resources, use them to turn them into other things and do things faster, while also like focusing, as I said, on yourself as a character, your character progression, build, gear, and so on and so forth, and ultimately taking on harder and harder bosses, getting more and more shit in return. Really interesting game.
So it's on. Did you say it's on Steam?
It is on Steam. We got sent a code, so I'm not 100% sure how much it costs. But yeah, I'd imagine it's also one that, in spite of being in early access, again, you've got to be careful when you say stuff like this with an asterisk, of course. But based on the sales so far, it seems like it's going to be an obvious one for this for the developers, Stunlock Studios, to kind of run with and continue developing, continue supporting. It's already become one of those games where it feels like every time I open IGN or something like that, the top article will be like, "Here's everything I wish I knew when I started V Rising." Like, it's kind of got that word of mouth constantly. More and more people are picking it up, kind of thing.
Okay.
Hit 1.5 million sales 2 days ago, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was 2 million before long. $19.99 US.
There you go. Sounds pretty good.
So yeah, that's V Rising. And now I'm looking forward to hearing what you have been up to.
I'll try and keep it brief. So I did play a new game. I played some Tribes of Midgard because that was available through PlayStation Plus, and I downloaded that and had a blast. Funnily enough, Jamie, do you know what you do in some of that game?
Mm-hmm.
You chop down trees and you smash rocks. You get rocks, and you turn those rocks into planks.
Okay.
And you collect things. Yeah. So
okay. Are there any metals? Like is there a copper or an iron or a?
Yes, there are iron.
Oh,
there's iron that you can collect as well.
Interesting.
Interesting. So I've only played. I think I played like a couple of hours of it. I sort of played enough to do the tutorial and sort of then play sort of an actual game. But cool concept. Like, you start off, you have a little like Viking village that you get brought back to life, and you get sent to as like a warrior. You start off like in your pants, with nothing, and you have to beat up a tree, and then sort of get sticks, and then you have to get like leather from animals, and then you can make yourself some armor, and etc., and you build yourself up from there. But the good thing about the thrust of Tribes of Midgard is that you end up sort of fighting these like frost giants, or these huge like enemies that sort of come into your area, and you get warned about, and you've got a certain amount of time to take them out before they come and destroy your base. And I was playing online with some other random people, so it's like a mad dash, sort of collect as much resources as possible, level up your base, create some like archer towers, build like better fortifications, and sort of take out enemies that attack you like every night, and then get to the point where you can take out like I don't think they call them Titans. I don't know what they even call them collectively. I can't remember. But you've got to like take these guys out before they get to your base and destroy it, because they're effectively trying to destroy this tree at the center of your base, and it's all about like protecting the tree and giving it resources, effectively for you to win the day. But it's really cool. I've been enjoying it. Like I said, I only played it for a couple of hours. I need to get more into it, figure out the best ways to sort of level up and get gear ready and get ready to rock.
Does it sound harsh if I say that when you, based on that description, that it sounds like a never-ending escort quest? Like, the idea of constantly having to keep something alive kind of gives me an anxiety attack?
It's not, it's more like a place to dump resources. So you've got this tree in the middle of your base where it's not like you're taking it anywhere. You just occasionally might run back and go, oh, here's a bunch of souls that I've collected from all the enemies I've slain and the trees I've knocked down and these like giant that I dispatched. It's more like a way just to gauge how well you're doing versus how badly you're doing, because as the enemies, they attack your tree, it loses souls, you have to replenish it. But I'd say you need to watch some videos about it. Really, I'm probably describing it really badly, but it's got a good art style to it as well. It's similar sort of top-down isometric view. But cool concept. I've been enjoying it a little bit.
Yeah.
Outside of playing a little bit of Red Dead Redemption 2.
And I guess
that's all I've been. Sorry.
I said it also can fill the God of War Ragnarok shaped hole in your heart while you're waiting to fight frost giants with your own bare hands.
Yes, exactly. It does. It's the combat is not as good, but it does fill that hole, so it's not too bad. I'll lightly touch on for the people who don't, who can't stand to hear it mentioned, and we already have this podcast already. But I've watched the first 2 episodes of Obi-Wan Kenobi, which I didn't hear great things about after the first episode. Like, some people were sort of saying it's not very good, but I've watched the first 2 and I thought it was a lot better than I thought it was going to be, based on what some people were saying.
Interesting.
It seems to be in a good place. I was a bit surprised with where it went, because I wasn't really expecting. I don't know if I was expecting a bit more of a dark and broody thing, and it's already got Obi-Wan gallivanting around the galaxy. Which is kind of weird, but it totally makes sense. I suddenly realised in the lore, because he goes after Princess Leia, who gets kidnapped, and I was like, why has he left Tatooine? I thought he was looking after Luke. Then, of course, in the lore, Leia, obviously in episode 4, A New Hope, says, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you need to help me. You're my only hope. So she obviously has a pre-existing relationship with him before A New Hope. So they're sort of filling in that gap, I think. They're saying this is 10 years.
Okay.
This is 10 years after episode 3. So this is
Can I ask
10
an
years old.
episode 4 spoiler?
Yeah, sure.
Does Obi-Wan Kenobi... Yeah, I know, as dumb as that sounds. Does Obi-Wan Kenobi get killed by Darth Vader before he's able to reconvene with Leia? Like,
yes.
Do they share screen time?
No.
Okay, interesting. I'd forgotten that fact, and that actually makes sense for this show.
Right, yeah, no, they don't reconvene. It's I think, if I'm right, he gets killed right as she runs out of the doorway with Luke and Han to run onto the ship, and there's which the only thing that does make it a little bit weird is she doesn't react any more strongly to him being like cut down. Like, Luke's the one who goes like, no. Whereas you'd think that maybe if she had an existing relationship, she'd be
because she was probably asking herself what I was asking myself when I first saw it at the age of like 5 or 6. Why did he just disappear? Where's his body? He just disappeared. He just turned into a thin air. Like, what happened?
And even Darth Vader even pokes around at his robe to see where he's gone.
He's like, hang on, is he? What? Where is he?
Where did you go? But no, it's cool. No, no, I've been enjoying it so far. It's got a lot of the similar actors who come back. So was it Senator Organa is the same guy from episode 2 and 3? I guess he's in.
Luke's uncle guy. The Australian actor.
Yeah, he's back in it. And then the guy Obi-Wan Kenobi is obviously Obi-Wan Kenobi. I can't remember. No. What is his name?
What?
So bad.
Ewan McGregor.
Ewan McGregor.
I didn't realise that was the name you couldn't recall.
Ewan McGregor.
Cool.
Yeah, it's decent. I tell you what, one thing I realised, and I'll only mention this really briefly because I want other people to comment down below and tell me if they agree with this. I just finished the 2nd season of The Mandalorian, and I couldn't figure out why that show was so weird. And I was like, this show is very strange, and I don't know why. I've enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy it for a bit, then I did enjoy it, and then I didn't enjoy it, and then I did enjoy it. I've now finished season 2. And my wife totally nailed it. And she said, you know why this is weird? Because it's written like a computer game. And I suddenly was like, oh shit, it actually is. Like, it's even like the fights and the way things work out, it's like someone's written a computer game.
Right.
And anyone else who's seen The Mandalorian, especially season 2, do you think it's written like it could be a video game? Because I think that's why it seems like a bit of a strange one. Like you do escort missions, you get side quests. You get, like, he keeps having to do something. He's like, I want to go there. You can go there, but only if you do this thing. Oh, okay. And then he bumps into something, and there's a boss fight, and there's loads of like random enemies to take out, and it's just it is. And there's like groups of stormtroopers who arrive just to be enemies, just to be fodder, and he just takes a few of them out, and then like a boss will appear, and it's weird. I know I've now digressed into
that does sound like a video game to be fair. That is often how it's structured.
It's very video gamey. But no, that's me done.
How many episodes are planned for Obi-Wan? Do you know?
I have no idea. So
Is it 8, 10?
3 are currently out, I believe.
Oh, 3 are out. Okay, I thought.
Or maybe it's more than 3.
I thought it was 2.
No,
but
the
that
third
shows
one
how
is
much
out.
I know.
I know the third one. There you go. TV 2. 6. 6 parts.
See, that's not many. I mean, it appeals to someone like me, but it's not many.
No, that's actually interesting. So I'm 2 episodes in, so I'm already a third of the way through, and I'm going to be interested to see how they sort of wrap up the story. It might actually feel too brief. Weird. I'm not going to read on it just in case I read any spoilers. Did you see there was some random, like, I never know how much of this is just a few people getting blown out of proportion, but did you see there was a big backlash to apparently there was some like racist shit going on with one of the main actresses?
Yeah, I all I saw was that I heard that she had been receiving a lot of abuse, and a lot of it was racist and blah 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 blah, and then I saw that Ewan McGregor filmed a video to say, hey, you know, we're all in support of this actress and she did a wonderful job, and that if you're racist, then, you know, you're not a Star Wars fan, and so on and so forth. Then that began the classic sort of like really dumb rhetoric back and forth of like, oh, so I guess if I just dislike this character or think she's poorly written, then I'm a racist now, right? And it's like, I love Mace Windu and all that kind of stuff. It's like, I couldn't go either way. Like, you probably are a bit racist, and just
I always think with those things, like it's I'm sure there's a minority of people that may sort of seem to amplify it, because I guess if you get a few of those messages, it's going to seem like really bad. Like you always, the bad ones always seem to stand out. I would hope that, like, obviously that she gets, because she's fine. She's a lot.
Oh yeah.
She's perfectly fine in the show. The weird thing is there are some really annoying characters, and she's not one of them. And that's one thing I thought was quite funny. There's this well annoying like head Inquisitor guy who's just the most dumbest annoying character in it, who's not in it for very long. But yeah, a bit random. Yeah.
That's the kind of the thing that irks me about it in Star Wars in general. It's just that, like, and again, Star Wars fans can disagree with this. A lot of them probably will. But as someone who's not a huge fan of Star Wars and kind of operates on the outside looking in, if you were to be consistent with your disdain for either poorly written characters or actors who gave poor performances, you would dislike the overwhelming majority of characters from depending on who you are, 6 of the 9 movies.
Oh,
like,
some of it is such hot trash. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
No. So
the idea that, you know, this a new character, but that again I feel weird wading into it because
sorry.
I know, just because I haven't seen the show, and like I know some people are super sensitive about this stuff, but I was like again, like going back to it, like the build up to Obi-Wan Kenobi was almost defined by the, you know, the rapturous welcome and return that Hayden Christensen was given. And for me, like, the most defining feature about Hayden Christensen's performances in episodes 2 and 3, and perhaps slightly contributed to as well by the lines that Hayden Christensen got given for episodes 2 and 3, were how disastrously bad they were.
Oh,
and so
bad.
And so the idea that
is he back? Is he back for Obi-Wan Kenobi?
Yeah, he's been everywhere. He's been every promotional thing. Like, he's done every interview.
I did not watch any of the promotional stuff for Obi-Wan Kenobi at all.
Oh, he's been everywhere. Sorry.
I tried to like not see any of it because I was kind of like, oh, let me just go into it cold. But I even actually, what's funny is the first time you see a bit of Darth Vader, I did say, it would actually be wicked if he comes. I thought it would be wicked if Hayden Christensen comes back, purely because I feel so sorry for how, pilloried he was in his performance and in the lines that he had.
Yeah.
And I thought it might be nice if he gets a second shot, a second go.
But in that, for me, like, you've entirely encapsulated like the weird sort of contradictory nature of how some of these Star Wars fans seem to be operating, where there was this outpouring of goodwill for Hayden Christensen, this idea that they wanted a very average, if not bad, actor to be given another shot. Because like you said, he got pilloried the first time around, and at the same time, let's take race out of it. Let's say she's not a black woman, like, to be attacking and bullying and sending death threats to another character. And let's also be honest. The last time this happened significantly to an actor that was portraying a new character in a Star Wars project, whether it was a TV show or a movie, it was also a woman, and they were also not white. So. I don't know. There's
who's
Kelly Tran.
I don't even know who that is.
I don't know the character's name, but she's the Asian actress who's in The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker.
Okay. Oh, right, okay. I tell you what's weird about that. I actually quite like the new trilogy, the newest trilogy, the Rise of Skywalker ones. I didn't think they were too bad, but some people absolutely hated them. But then I don't understand how you can like the original trilogy and then not like the final trilogy, because those were bad, like so bad. Anyway, people get annoyed when we talk about Star Wars in this. I've ruined it because I keep talking about Star Wars.
It's the worst of both worlds, because not only have we continued to talk about Star Wars, we've also now encapsulated race and gender and probably politics in some way, shape, or form. So
no, we haven't. We're quickly moving on. So we're not talking about Star Wars
on
anymore.
Hey, Jonesy, do you know what else people are really crazy about for some reason? Actually, no, I'm gonna retract that for some reason. I know exactly why. It's BioWare and BioWare-related products. And although BioWare have kind of missed the mark on a few occasions in recent memory with games such as Anthem and Mass Effect Andromeda, that, depending on who you ask, were either some of the worst games of all time or ran the risk of completely ruining some of the best series of all time, respectively, there is still a lot of support and love out there for BioWare, and a lot of hope, and I can get behind this message, that BioWare will one day return to form and return to making the kind of classic RPGs that we know they are capable of. And one of the games that is leading the charge on that front is what we expect to see from them next, Jonesy, and that is the artist formerly known as Dragon Age 4.
Yes, because it's now got a name.
It does, and that name, for anyone that missed it, is Dragon Age Dreadwolf, which I presume is a really cool reference to something that's really cool within the Dragon Age world, but as someone who played like 8 hours of Dragon Age Inquisition and felt like I'd had a good enough time to call it a day, I don't know what a Dreadwolf is.
Me either. Yeah. I never played a Dragon Age game, so there you go.
Yeah.
Chris is probably listening to this, like, pulling his hair out, going like, "Oh, mate, Dreadwolf."
I don't think Chris is a Dragon Age guy, but he is probably also, like, unhappy. Maybe not unhappy. He wants us maybe to give it more of a fair shake. I've got to be honest. I do have a dog in this fight, and some Dragon Age fans are going to have to cover their ears. The only reason I want Dragon Age Dreadwolf to be good is because it allows me to justifiably raise my expectations for the return of Mass Effect. Like, I want them to be, with all due respect to Dragon Age, I want this to be the game where they're clearly back on the right track, and I want Mass Effect to be where it peaks. That's
fair enough.
Yes, so
it would be nice to get Mass Effect back, like, to form again.
Oh, mate, it would be that's the dream of all dreams. And, like, would you play a good Dragon Age game if Dragon Age Dreadwolf came out and 93 on Meta? Okay, wow, that was pretty.
You know, like when you just it's been too long, you're too far off, and you're like, I'm not going to get into a new series now, and they've been out. You know, there's a group of fans who want to get into that, and I'm not one of them. So, you know, let's. Hey, maybe I would. I'd never say never. Never say never, but
you redeemed it at the end there. Get rid of the I doubt it, and you'll be completely fine. We will have to wait a little bit longer, though, before we find out whether or not Jonesy will go back on his word or his promise on that, because they confirmed the game wouldn't be released this year, but they are, quote, growing closer to that next adventure, and they will be talking about the game more later this year. I wonder if that means that maybe we see it again, maybe get another trailer again. It could be right at the tail end of the year. It could be fucking the Game Awards like they first announced to begin with, and then maybe 2023 is the year where we start to get a more proper rollout of information and a gameplay reveal and so on and so forth. All speculation at the moment, but we would be seeing sooner rather than later. But Jonesy, the other reason I brought this up is because with onlookers and people who like to get involved in video game discussions on social media, this did kind of raise a little interesting discussion, because whilst BioWare have officially confirmed Dragon Age's name as Dragon Age Dreadwolf, the news that was the planned name did leak a handful of hours before BioWare were able to confirm it themselves, which drew out a tweet from someone called Marcel Hatam, who is a brand manager over at Ubisoft, and he said, "Remember the days when developers were occasionally able to reveal what they had been working on to their community on their own terms, without all being spoilt by the same few clout-chasing writers and insiders promoting their podcast? Those days were great. #DragonAge." A pretty significant clapback at something that we've commented on in the past, which is the rise of these so-called clout-chasing insiders and journalists who are desperate to get the scoops before the companies can have it themselves. Do you think this was an appropriate clapback from someone within the industry? Or are these insiders just doing their jobs?
I'm split. I am split, because I completely agree that the stuff getting leaked before the companies want to announce it, when the fact that they can't even have anything these days, the fact that everything seems to be leaked, must be incredibly frustrating, especially if you plan like, a big reveal, or you're really looking forward to like a showcase or a state of play or whatever, and you really want to sort of give the fans something cool to look at. You don't really want it to leak in that sense. It's not really the journalist's fault or the insider's fault if they get given information by people that are under an embargo or they're under NDAs or something. Like, if they're given information, then I guess they feel like that it's part of their job and whatever to put it out there.
Yes.
It's funny, because do you know what? If someone gave us information on this show and they said, hey, no one knows about this, it's super secret, it's coming out, it's going to be on the state of play that you're going to be covering like next week, but I've got a release date for God of War Ragnarok, and they're going to announce next week. Do you want to put it in the show? Like, don't tell me, you can just do it. I'd put it in the show.
Yeah.
Because it's not on me. Like, it's not on me to keep it a secret. I do think that some of the bigger guys who they constantly do these releases, I think that maybe those guys don't need it in the same way. Maybe that's not fair. Maybe they do. But like, occasionally they could do a leak or they could do a release. But sometimes, I mean, yeah, give the company a chance to do the cool reveal.
I will say, I don't know if this is one of the people you were kind of sort of indirectly referencing, but Jeff Grubb decided not to announce the name of Dragon Age Dreadwolf before BioWare did it.
I like that. I like that Grubby's gone and done that. He's been non-grubby by keeping it to himself.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't know. Do you know what might be worse is the almost like, you guys aren't going to believe this amazing news I've got, like where they don't really say anything.
Yes.
Like, Jason Schreier loves doing that. Guys, you just wait until you see the next explosive thing I'm going to be released. Like, maybe that is a little bit even worse than. But then no, but it's not. I guess it's just building up hype.
And it's all, like you said, as you.
It's all for clout. It's all clout.
But like you, when you posed the question of what we would do for this podcast, like, yeah, these are all people who have the opportunity to benefit from a piece of news that, like, doesn't really harm people that much. And
the scummy people are the leakers, right? I suppose that's where I've come down.
Right, yeah.
I've changed my mind. The scummy people are the leakers at the end of
somewhere, someone in the chain has broken an NDA to let that information, escape from within the walls it was meant to be maintained by, or contained by. I think it has to
be, right? Those are the people that were supposed to keep it a secret and who didn't.
Yeah. But as you said, I do like the people who kind of try and keep it somewhat sensible when it comes to, okay, here's all the information I've got, here's all the sources I've got, here's everything I could leak, and here's actually what I'm going to leak or how I'm going to leak it. Like, there was a thing where Jeff Grubb, to mention him again, revealed that, showed the world that he knew that the Star Wars game was called Star Wars Jedi Survivor. It was something ridiculous, like 3 or 4 months ago, by pointing to an article that he'd written way back at the time where he'd like left clues to it being called that. But he was like, well,
so he could call back and say,
yeah. So he's
look,
like, this is when I knew, and this was when I started teasing it being called Survivor, but I didn't want to just come out and say, oh, this is what the game's called.
That's funny because then in future people are going to pour over everything he does trying to look for clues the next time a game comes out for it.
Oh yeah, exactly. It'll be like Zodiac shit. Like every journalist will have to think twice about the first letter of every sentence. From this point on,
for sure. So funny.
But yeah, I feel like we're largely in agreement on that.
But it's funny because I've signed NDAs. I've had stuff where I wasn't allowed to talk about games that I knew that or had played, and we've always honoured everything like that. And I've always felt like it's something that you trade access for the fact that you're not going to say something. And I do think that people, at the end of the day, the ones who are being a little bit scummy, if anyone, has got to surely be the leakers, I suppose, the people who say they're not going to tell people and then who do. But it's the sieve has so many holes these days. It's not a handful of journos, it's streamers and YouTubers and all sorts of people up and down.
It's hundreds, if not thousands, of people before it even gets to the streamers and YouTubers. Like that's the thing.
Right.
Like people love to think of game development as a thing of like, here's 100 programmers sat in a room working on a thing. It's like, no, these companies have hundreds of employees in hundreds of different departments, and every single department will have some reason to be privy to that kind of information. And like, not everyone is there who's there as an employee who's been there for 10 years who wants to protect it. There's going to be interns. There's going to be, people who don't pass their probation that were there for 3 months and leave. And like in that 3 months, they've picked up the next 5 years worth of secrets. Like,
man, HR are the worst. We're recruiting for this position on this game. You're like, you've just given it away.
Yeah. Well, that's the worst new trend in gaming. Calling it a speaking of bad trends in gaming, Jonesy, there is sometimes an idea that's held in some corners of the games industry that bigger is better. And when you're looking at perhaps slightly more linear game design and applying the bigger is better logic to it, some believe that the only logical way to go is to embrace the idea of an open world. And one such video game mascot, a legend of the games industry that is doing just that at the moment, I keep saying his upcoming release because he feels like such a person, due out in holiday of this year, is our old friend Sonic the Hedgehog, who is going on his open world adventure in Sonic Frontiers, which got a 7-minute gameplay video this week, courtesy of IGN, who have got it as their IGN first for June. We watched this 7-minute gameplay video, Jonesy, you and I both, and Chris as well. The three of us chatted about it on WhatsApp. It's fair to say that we had some thoughts.
It was trash, wasn't it?
It really looks ropey. I feel so bad. Like, do I feel bad? I kind of feel bad, but it looks really ropey.
So when they first revealed the kind of world that it was going to be in, and we were saying like, wow, looks like it's going to be open world. The world it was in looked like they were just trying to recreate the world from the beginning of the Sonic movie, which is fair. Like, I understand why they would want to do something like that. They wanted to have a big open island with huge, rings for him to run around and bridges to run across. If it had been like that, I think I would have thought it was pretty cool. But it looks like they've made this overly photorealistic, like lush world with very tall pillars and rock faces and things, and then they've just dumped an old craply made Sonic animation onto it that doesn't seem to fit in the world very well, and then they've just sort of like sneezed out a bunch of old assets from a Sonic game that maybe was never released, where you can bounce on certain things and slide up certain things and run up ramps, and they just don't seem to fit the world for me at all. It was like it was a horrible mishmash of different styles and things that just didn't really work. I didn't see any gameplay. I just saw like a boring world with some shit to do that didn't seem very fun.
Yes. The aimlessness that you kind of referenced there, I was saying to you and Chris yesterday, it kind of, for me, sat between two different ideas, and neither of them are particularly that good. But it was kind of like on a scale where if you gave them the most benefit of the doubt, it looked like a team that had, and you and I have some thoughts about this that might differ, but had looked at trailers and gameplay for The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and assumed that basically taking your character, your protagonist, and dropping him in a big, sparse, almost empty open world filled with lush greenery was enough to create a video game, which is not. And that's completely missing the point of Breath of the Wild. And on the bad scale of things, this is kind of leaning into what you were just saying. It looked like one of those one-man team Unreal Engine 5 demos where, you know how someone has taken the city from the Matrix that Epic released for free and put a really average Spider-Man or Superman model in there, and all of a sudden it gets 15 million views. Someone's done that for Sonic. And it's like, well, if I take an Unreal Engine 5 demo and I drop Sonic in there and he looks half decent and his animations somewhat register as being Sonic-like, then we're fine. And like the way that the environment or lack thereof was constructed and designed within that open world, where you've just got Sonic looking off into the distance, and rather than seeing, you know, the vistas and the forests and the lushness of something like Breath of the Wild, you've just got like, oh, there's this weird like mess of lines that are just floating in the air because they're all like rails that Sonic, like, do you remember, reminded me of, do you remember Lion Rider, the browser game where you could draw lines and this weird guy in a cart would land on them and ride them? It's like the finished project of someone who'd been playing Line Rider for half an hour, and they just copied and pasted that into the air. And it's like this weird mess of squiggles next to a tower that the person controlling the demo kind of starts to climb and then gets to the top and is like, well, I'm just going to jump off now.
Yes.
It was like, what is going on? Like, what are we doing?
It was so weird. Like, I don't. Hey, I know sometimes, you know, I say, oh, it's like simple to me. I've never.
Compound simplicity, Jonesy. Come on, say it.
No, I'm trying to think. Like, it seems like the most basic elements of gameplay they just ignored, and all they've tried to do, like you said, is create an Unreal Engine 5 open world that looks lush, and then say, if we just put Sonic in it, it'll be fun because people like to run fast. And then they've realised, oh, this is really boring because all you're doing is running around in an open world. What should we do? Oh, let's just stick some crap in that people can jump on and slide along. And then they've gone back and gone, oh, well, now we need to try and put some gameplay elements in. Have him run up a side of a pillar? Yeah, all right. And it just seemed weird. Like, it didn't seem
utterly bizarre.
I'm really hoping that was a like an empty world where all the gameplay elements were taken out and they just were trying to showcase. Maybe they shouldn't have, but they were trying to showcase the type of thing the world will be like in the game, like how the openness, and actually when you play it, it's gonna feel more like it makes sense. Because at the moment, I don't think it made sense.
No, I don't. Maybe I'm giving Sega too much of the benefit of the doubt, or not enough. But I don't even know. But like, why would you come out in June for a game that's due out on holiday and have your big gameplay reveal be that, and then not specify that, like, oh, this is more of a frame of reference to the kind of thing. Like, I think this is the game. But then that
in which case, what do you do?
It's completely inexplicable. Then? Like the objective wasn't apparent. And make no mistake, even if there were a more apparent objective, and even if Sonic had climbed that tower and then done this Breath of the Wild style thing where he'd got to the top and then he'd opened up got out his Sonic binoculars, the Sonic noculars, the bi-Soniculars, and then spotted something in the distance. Exactly. They hire us, Sega. Okay, we're here, we're available. And then he'd spotted like, oh, there's a puzzle I can go and solve, and that is kind of what happened. And it's like, you can go and solve that puzzle, and maybe he'd have got something in return, and like it would have all made more sense as to how it was contributing to the wider game. But like, there wasn't enough of a sort of a breadcrumb trail. There wasn't enough connective tissue for even just within the 7 minutes to see how this was all leaning into or adding towards a more cohesive and whole product that might be on store shelves in 5 months' time. And yeah, what you're left with, and fundamentally, again, even if that was not the case, even if that stuff had been more accounted for, and this did look more cohesive, and it was easier to tell what this was a 7-minute excerpt from, and what we might be doing in that finished game, it still looks like something I don't want to play. It still looks like a slightly awkward, like again. I've been saying this since the dawn of time. The worst thing about Sonic is that he's at his he's so good at his best when he's going fast that everyone overlooks how bad it is to control when he's at his worst, which is when he's not moving. And this game had the exact same problem where even Sonic's kind of walking animation didn't look right. It was like he was moonwalking, like gliding on the surface, because Sonic isn't a character who's meant to just be like, Sonic can't platform in the way Mario can. And so when you've
No.
got this completely vertical tower, which is what the first thing he tries to scale, they have to do all this dumb shit like a wall that Sonic can climb, but then at one point he starts running up it, rails that go up the side, those stupid bounce pads, and like none of it feels like anything like that I want to do. And the other thing that has never been fixed in any Sonic game ever, to my knowledge, is combat. Like, what do you do? Like, Sonic is a guy who jumps in the air and then like bounces at people, and then that's it. Like, you can't do that for. The mind truly boggles. I don't get it.
I think Sonic has a similar problem to like Superman, which is when you've got that when your main, and as you referenced, when you've got that much power, like it's so hard to say to then limit the character, to limit what you can do. And if his thing is that he can go fast, how do you represent that in a video game? Because you can't actually have him run fast. You've got limitations of systems, you've got limitations of whatever. Imagine how big the world has to be just to have it so that your character can run that fast. And it just seems like they made the worst choices. They've just tried to go with that. It would have made more sense to me to have done something which they did in the Sonic movie, which is to have like everyone else goes slow, almost like Max Payne style. You can still move around at normal speed and everyone's in slow motion. Like that sort of thing would make more sense to me, rather than going, do you know what? We're going to have a slightly crappy animation and you're just going to be able to have a little like almost like Sonic Boom every time he runs and he wants to get an extra boost and then he's running through trees. And I don't know, there was just no gameplay. It looked really boring. The controls looked jank. It looked like at one point that whoever was controlling it was just hitting a button to sort of like do spin ball jumps into these little balloons that were dotted around the level to get around. And you're like, are you just doing that because the controls are so bad that you can't actually just have proper platforming? Which is obviously dire,
right,
if you're saying that that's the main element of your game,
exactly.
like a platform game. Like, let's not forget, Sonic came out at a time when they were trying to show off a system and say, hey, we've got was it 128-bit system compared to, or a 64-bit system? No, before, of course, it's what, 32-bit system. They were showing off their 32-bit system versus Nintendo's 16-bit system. So the whole point of going fast and the graphics, like, look how good it is. Times have changed. Mario looks good. You don't just need to try and keep doing the same old shit. It's not going to work. You have to actually make a decent game. And that's what they haven't done. But,
Yeah. The ironic thing to me, like you mentioned Mario there, is the last time we saw a 3D Mario in a technically new adventure, it was the Bowser's Fury edition to Super Mario 3D World, the Wii U port. And it was, again, like funnily enough, an inkling as to what Nintendo might decide to do if Mario had to kind of embrace open world sort of like ideas a bit more. And it did it by having this larger area where Mario would arrive in certain places, and it would almost be like more linear finite Mario levels that were taking place within an open world. And that would kind of make more sense for Sonic if they'd managed to be able to do something like that. But it doesn't look like that's what they got. It looks like they've tried to throw the kitchen sink at it with those Breath of the Wild comparisons, and it hasn't worked for me.
I think, ironically, and I think you're right, the one thing they do need to do is limit the space Sonic has, because they need to nullify his speed to make the game have a point. Because otherwise you can just run it forever at 100,000 miles an hour and it doesn't make any sense. Yeah, but that's the one thing they haven't done. They've tried to go the other way, which I don't know how that turns into a game. I mean, like I said, unless that this is just they've selected a super bad thing to show off, and actually
I don't believe that. I just like...
Me either, because why would you do it?
No one would. No one would.
No one would.
Like, I didn't mention it, but we're talking about a game here that Sonic team head Takashi Izuki said he'd like to have the same lasting impact as Sonic Adventure, and to be the building block for, or to create the building blocks for future Sonic titles. And I just can't see either of those two things happening. So yeah, mad.
No. Mad.
One last thing, Jonesy, before we move on to the state of play, which is crazily enough now happening as we speak. So, hey, no spoilers. Keep your eyes off your phone. I'll be doing the same. I did just want to mention that a game that, weirdly enough, will actually be giving Sonic Frontiers a run for its money and probably end up creating a better open world than Sonic Frontiers when it also launches at the end of this year on November 18th, 2022, are the brand new Pokemon games. I'm talking about Pokemon Scarlet and Pokemon Violet. They got a new trailer and that November release date today. We got our eyes on two new legendaries, and I guess the big new feature that's being touted that is new to the Pokemon world is that there will be 4-player co-op, and 4 players can simultaneously explore an open world completely freely as they look to kind of build on some of the open world trappings that they established earlier this year with Pokemon Legends Arceus, albeit with a slightly more traditional structure. Am I back, Jonesy?
Oh, you're back. Sorry, yeah, you're back.
See, here's the podcasting magic. I never stop talking.
I could hear. I was trying to go with it, but I just couldn't make out anything you were saying. So I'm sorry.
Oh, good. Well, basically, I just said everything that's already in the document, and because I never stopped talking, it meant that there was no weird gap there, in spite of the fact that, for the folks wondering at home, Jonesy couldn't hear me for like the last 30 seconds.
Professionalism. Utter professionalism. Yes, a new Pokemon game. It looks very Pokemon. It looks... I think... From what I saw the bit of the trailer, I guess it looks like it's gone back to where people want it to be after Arceus, because people were not too keen on the direction that game went. Although I heard a lot of good things about it, and a lot of people enjoyed that game. All my little Pokemon fans that I live with haven't played any Arceus, so I wonder if they're going to go back to Pokemon for Scarlet and Violet.
Here's the question, though, Jonesy. Do you get another Switch in the Jones household and a second copy of the game so that the kids can play co-op and explore the open world together? Because that is the new headline, new feature for this game.
I would say no, but it's now my eldest and my wife who like to play Pokemon, so I can imagine them playing together, in which case she might buy a Switch so that she can do that.
Are you a one-Switch household at the moment?
We are a one-Switch household. Yes. But the kids play more PlayStation 5, to be honest, which is really impressive, given that my 3-year-old plays PlayStation 5 with a PlayStation 5 controller. That is tough. So fair play to them.
That is pretty impressive. All right. Well, hey, if the Jones household needs a co-op partner when Pokemon Scarlet and Violet release later this year, they can call on me, because after missing out on Arceus and not really truly getting my teeth into a Pokemon open world, I'm looking forward to this one. And it's also nice to get another game that's confirmed for November, because the rest of the year was looking a little bit dry, although I'd imagine the many live streams and events and conferences that flesh out the release calendar for the rest of the year are going to be what's taking place in the next couple of months. First and foremost, the one that's happening right now is the PlayStation State of Play. It would have happened previously for you as you're listening to this, but it is upon us now as we talk to you. And what we are going to do, completely unprecedented, but actually we're going to use the power of editing and a little bit of trickery, and what you'll find is that when I click my fingers, we will be back in the exact same positions we were before I clicked, except this time, again, through the power of editing, we have now seen the State of Play live stream for June 2nd. And Jonesy, I think it's fair to say, considering we had to go in with somewhat measured expectations, we knew that there would be a focus on third-party titles, we knew there'd be a focus on PlayStation VR 2, and we knew that it would come in at less than 30 minutes. Considering all those caveats were outlined beforehand, I feel like this was a pretty solid, well-rounded, nice little State of Play.
No, I did as well. There were some very nice trailers, some very good-looking games. I completely forgot that it was third-party and VR-focused. I thought there was going to be some first-party stuff in there, but you reminded me just before, so my expectations weren't. I wasn't let down too much. But yes. No, I thought it was a good State of Play. Some cool stuff to be seen. Some cool
Absolutely.
Games.
I think there are going to be some people out there who maybe consider it not quite befitting of sort of the launch of Summer Game Fest or the first of the big June live streams. I totally get that. But I also think that when you break down what some of the games that were being shown actually are and their significance within the industry, and the fact that Sony obviously still has working relationships with a lot of partners, especially Eastern partners, a huge emphasis on this stream on Capcom, then all of a sudden I think the games that were shown start to make sense. Although one thing that did immediately take me by surprise and completely blew up my expectations of what could be shown here was a game that, hey, we all knew it existed, one of the worst kept secrets out there, but I didn't think we'd see it anytime soon. Resident Evil 4 Remake. Got a new trailer. We saw the game running on on PlayStation 5. We got a release date of the 24th of March 2023 and the promise of some PlayStation VR 2 content being in development. I mean, I'll be honest, Jonesy, yeah, I didn't think this would happen this soon. I was a naysayer on the Resi 4 situation.
It does seem like that it's come along quite quickly. So no, that's decent, and they've done a smashing job by the looks of the trailer of the remake. Not a Resident Evil game that I played originally, so looking forward to when this one comes out. I really enjoyed the remake of Resident Evil 1. I haven't played 2 yet, so yeah, I'm all about some more Resident Evil remake. I'm sure as hell not going to play any of the more recent Resident Evils yet because they are terrifying.
Yes, and they actually got more terrifying as a result of the state of play because the PSVR 2 kind of run continued with confirmation that Resident Evil Village will be arriving on PlayStation VR 2. Jonesy and I, as we mentioned, we recorded a piece of Patreon content where we reacted to the state of play live, and I think the first thing we realised when this was announced was that this is basically so horny men and children, and not men and children, horny
men, children.
I was gonna say men, women, and children, and I was like, no, you can't say children, and then I said horny people.
Of all stripes, we'll be looking down Lady Dimitrescu's top,
exactly,
leaning over,
basically just peering over
and looking up her skirt.
Yeah, exactly. And
oh no, she's 8 feet tall, so you won't even be able to. You'd have to jump. You'd have to get on a chair.
There's going to be a great screenshot out there of like the Amazon like sales charts. When this game launches, it's going to be #1 bestseller PSVR 2 headset, #2 bestseller Resident Evil Village, #3 bestseller a stepladder.
Yes. Oh no, actually, what were you talking about? You won't need a stepladder because it would just be people laying on the floor just trying to get underneath her.
Trying to get stepped on. And like
trying to get stepped on.
1-star reviews. Oh, I didn't feel anything when she stepped on me. I could say.
Oh, there'll be people getting their other halves to stand on them while they lay on the floor with a headset, so they can get the full immersive experience.
And speaking of immersive experiences, I guess, to my memory at least, it was our first look at seeing a game running in real time on PlayStation VR 2. And a nice one as well, because obviously we have the frame of reference of what Village looks like running on a PlayStation 5, for example. And I thought it looked pretty good.
Yes.
You mentioned at the time, like, we need to see what it's like with the headset on, screen door effect, so on and so forth. But pretty solid first impression.
It was interesting because next up we obviously got to look at Saints and Sinners Redemption, and that looked more in keeping with what you're used to, I think, with more of like a VR experience, like some simplified textures and a bit more, straightforward, and wasn't quite pushing the boat out. But it was interesting to see those two things side by side because I think Village, the port does look fantastic, and I think it will look fantastic in VR as well. Like we played some of Resident Evil 7 in VR. On the Burst headset, and that looked very, very good. Like it wasn't quite. Some of the things weren't quite up to snuff when you consider it against the actual game playing on a monitor. But I think this will sort of blow everyone away.
Yeah,
very excited about some of the things that are coming to PSVR 2.
Yeah, because up next we got a quick look at No Man's Sky, which obviously has continued to come on leaps and bounds every single few months. It feels like there's another update to talk about. Obviously, seeing that in VR will be pretty cool. And also, we did see, as they confirmed ahead of the stream, more of Horizon Call of the Mountain, which is the new Horizon PSVR 2 game from Guerrilla and Firesprite. And again, like I think when you consider all 4 PSVR titles we looked at, we kind of ran the gamut for what you'd expect, from more photorealistic graphics to, as you mentioned, with Saints and Sinners, the slightly more traditional VR. Actually, let's not go for the photorealism thing because it doesn't necessarily work. We had, fully animated arms. We also had floating hands. We had a bit of everything.
Sorry, go on.
I was going to say you are and were a VR early adopter. You're one of the guys that's kind of been willing to champion this tech when it's done right. How are you feeling about the first kind of boatload of PSVR 2 teasers?
It's interesting. I mean, the angle that I wouldn't necessarily have wanted to go personally would be sort of like the zombie game route, like Walking Dead, like Village, even like Resident Evil 4 Remake, purely because I think those games, it's more about the gameplay, it's more about sort of like the experience, and I think the strength of VR, especially PlayStation VR in the past, has been the visuals. And so some of the more like colourful, simplistic animations, especially like PlayStation, I can't even think what it was called, but the sort of some of those more like platformy games that they released for the PlayStation VR 1 really showcased very nicely how good the PlayStation VR can be. I would like to have seen maybe some more of that kind of thing rather than these super complex games, just to kind of mix it up. But I, for one, think No Man's Sky, I think, will look phenomenal in VR. I think flying through the atmosphere of a planet and landing on a ship and
Totally.
seeing your the cockpit close down around you is going to look incredible. Because another thing about No Man's Sky is it does have a more simplistic art style than something maybe like Star Citizen or something like that, and
Yes.
those work so much better in VR. Those textures just look better because you don't get the jaggy edges and the jank that you do get with more like photorealism. Obviously, I don't know how good the VR2 headset is in comparison because I've never used one. But No Man's Sky is going to be great. Also, Horizon, I think just sitting on the floor in Horizon and just looking from like the top of a cliff and just looking at that world in VR and being able to like turn around and appreciate it and see like dinosaurs flying around or whatever they are. I think that looked phenomenal.
It feels like it'd be interesting to see how cohesive Call of the Mountain ends up being when all those kind of components that we saw in the trailer come together. But yeah, it did kind of look like, okay, here's an extended period of time being sat in a boat or a canoe, and here's an extended period of time like in a sort of a slightly smaller combat arena focused on archery, and here's some traversal with like the climb style elements and using the kind of the rock climber hook things, and I don't even know what they're called, but it'd be interesting to see how that all flows. Because one of the things you get from a Resident Evil Village style experience in PlayStation VR 2, and this is exactly what 7 did for the PSVR, is whether or not you're interested in it, it communicates to people like, oh, this isn't a VR game. This isn't like, in inverted commas, you know what I mean? This isn't an experience.
Yes.
This is a fucking video game. Like, that whole thing is there. And while no one wants to spend 10 hours in a headset, play a game from start to finish, you theoretically can. It's the whole experience. And it'd be interesting to see if games that were still created exclusively for VR, like Call of the Mountain, can still start to emulate actually, this feels like a whole fully fledged game, as opposed to being a kind of the experience or the shortened or simplified kind of experiences that I think plagued a lot of the early VR support and gave people the impression that VR software couldn't be designed on the same scale as non-VR software, which I hope they kind of put to rest.
I don't know, because I think the problem they have with the VR thing isn't necessarily the look, it's the traversal, it's how you move around the game world, and I still think that's an issue that they haven't fixed. And so I think you're always going to butt up against that, which is why you saw in the Call of the Mountain the canoe section, then you saw the like climbing a rock section, because they're trying to do anything except have you walking around because you can't walk around.
Totally.
And those visual stuff can only go so far, and then it's that strange disconnect as well of like you're sitting on a sofa pulling yourself up a cliff face, and I'm with you completely. Like it's the connection between those different elements to see how that game actually feels like, and you said whether or not it's an experience or whether or not it's a game. But it remains to be seen until we get to Ready Player One days of suits and couches. And
that's all you want. You just want to be able to wank in VR or fuck in VR or both.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah. Do you know what would make me wank in VR? One thing I kind of hoped we'd see today, even though there were no rumours of it at all, is obviously we all got to get our first non-VR hands on Astro in the form of Astro's Playroom when that launched on the PS5. Right. If the next Astro adventure is VR only, like Astro's, like the previous one was, like I forget what it's called.
That would be amazing in VR. That would be perfect.
Well, it was originally it was VR only, right? The first Astro game was VR only.
I meant if they make a new one in VR too.
Yes, that'd be incredible. Agreed. That'd be a big one. Moving on though, we then got a pretty cool update for PC players and PC only owners as Spider-Man, developed by Insomniac, is going to come out on PC on the 12th of August of this year, which, again, we said when we were watching it, pretty exciting update for anyone that either hadn't played Spider-Man yet and was looking forward to, or who only owns a PC, or who just wants to play that game at 120 frames a second for whatever reason. Like that's a neat update, and I'm glad they're doing that. Yeah,
fantastic. Shout out to all the PC-only people out there. You're going to get a good game coming your way.
Exactly.
You should play it. Very, very good.
Like people I know, like Steph will be kicking himself because I'm pretty sure Spider-Man was one of the games he played when he like kind of bought a PS4 just to kind of catch up on that last generation of games,
right?
And played games like God of War, and of course now they're all coming out on PC. He probably thinks to himself, if he'd waited a few more years, he'd have played arguably the best versions of these games. So that's pretty cool. 1 month sooner than that, and in fact just over a month away from now, on the 19th of July, we're finally going to get our hands on the Annapurna Interactive published Stray, otherwise known as the cat game. And not only does it still look good, Jonesy, it still looks like like a really interesting world, and obviously be able to get hands on with a cat. I was about to say get hands on with a cat. That also sounds a little bit like, I'm not endorsing bestiality. What you do with this bit better time, that's completely up to you. Basically, what I was going to say, Jonesy, is if that weren't appealing enough, it gets a little bit more appealing when they revealed that it would be a part of the new upgraded PlayStation Plus packages. I don't know how much money you have to pay a month to get it, but it will ostensibly be a part of one of those packages at launch, which is cool.
Yeah, that's exactly what they need to do. Like with those packages, they need to give you a reason to want to jump on them. And a game like Stray, which whilst it's not like a fully fledged AAA game from a massive studio, it looks fantastic. And the controls of the game, the way the cat moves looks great. That cyberpunk world looks really interesting. It's definitely a game that I'd probably have picked up anyway. But now I'll just say, hey, why am I going to do that? I'll just hop onto one of these PlayStation higher tier levels, and then I can get it for free. For free when I've already paid for it.
It looks like it is the premium tier up, which I think is the middle one. So again, it's like it's not a significant additional investment if you're already a PS Plus Essentials subscriber. I'm hoping all of these words become second nature to us in the coming months, because at the moment they feel a little bit weird. But yeah, that's a cool bonus, and I will probably play it that way. Moving on though to another game that I'm not sure I'm going to play at all. But actually looks really fucking cool, is the Callisto Protocol, which is the survival horror game that was kind of famous for looking a hell of a lot like Dead Space, because it was being made ostensibly by the same guy or the same director who worked on the original Dead Space. Also the game very famous for initially being pitched as being a part of the wider PUBG universe, only for them to sort of like come to their senses and announce that it is no longer a part of the PUBG universe. For as much as it scares the shit out of me, Josie, I think this looked really cool.
Yeah, it looked phenomenal. I'm never going to know what it plays like, because there's no way am I going anywhere near this. It looked terrifying. Look, Dead Space was bad enough, like back in the day, with the graphics that were available and all the capacity they had for like the visuals and the sound effects and that sort of terror then scared the crap out of me. There's no way I'm going to play this. It's too realistic. You've got weird melty men like getting in your face and dripping their goop all over you. There was a scene when a robot is like punching people in the head and making their heads explode. All of it's terrifying. And the sound, and just the sound effects as well. I can't hack it. There's like those wet, slimy sounds and clicker sounds and stuff coming out of vents. And he had a shotgun with like one shot in it. Why do they do this to you in games like that? Like, don't do that to me. If I need I need one of those like Rambo guns just to take out everyone, with like 1,000 rounds in it, just so I can feel safe. I can't have a one-shot shotgun in a game.
Somehow I don't feel like you're going to get that gun in this game.
No, you are.
But you're right. It does kind of feel in this like a reductive and also kind of sadistic way that the some of the people who made the original Dead Space played The Last of Us and were like, oh, there's a load of ways we can take our shit and make it even scarier using some of the lessons we learned from them, including like a dude essentially being hung upside down and unable to free himself from the situation as a monster of some nature walks towards him. Fucking gross and scary. Terrifying. And a game I no doubt I'm going to be forced to play by Chris at other people's entertainment.
And so someone will say it's much better. Wear headphones. It's much better. It's like the 3D sound. I'm like, no, of course not, because it's horrible.
It's never
and I'm
better.
Not playing that. And I'm not playing it in the dark. And I'm not playing it with a headset on. Really terrifying.
Yeah. One thing, though, that you may well be able to use to kind of reduce the stress and tension that has been induced by the Callisto Protocol, Jonesy, is a game coming out on the 16th of August that I believe is being made by Roll7, and that is Rollerdrome, even better, actually. It's like Videodrome, which kind of looks like an 80s-inspired rollerblading shooting gamey thing, but with Sable's art style. What a bizarre mix of ideas, but very cool.
Very strange. Yeah, it looked really cool. No, a great mishmash of concepts, and gotta love that 80s style. So yeah, look very good.
Yes, absolutely.
As we said when we were watching it, already more highly anticipated than what is it even called? The roller.
Roller. I forgot its name. I said its name earlier.
Rollerball.
Roller Derby. No.
Roller Derby.
Rollerball. What the fuck is the name of that Ubisoft game? Ubisoft Roller Champions.
Champions.
We forgot its fucking name. Jesus Christ.
There you go. Already more anticipated.
Yeah, step
And that's out.
aside, roller champions, make way for roller drome. In August. Slightly further away, though, Jonesy, early 2023, probably the game of the State of Play stream that appealed to us the least was Eternights, which was an anime action game that appeared to have some kind of elements of a dating sim involved. Highlights include a guy losing half of his arm and it being replaced by a sword, at which point I said, oh, that's pretty cool. And then lowlights being as the fucking control prompt that is certain to replace press X to pay your respects, which was hold R2 to hold
R2.
hands.
Yeah. A very good looking game. Again, I wish I was into JRPGs. I'm really not, and there was nothing there that made me go, "This is the time to change it." But maybe one day, we'll see.
Maybe one day. Like maybe if you ever, heaven forbid, touch wood, but if you ever end up like a lonely single alone man, then maybe these sort of like dating sims might fill a void that's in your heart one day. I'm just but
Don't. Do you know what? You've just reminded me that I saw a video the other day online, and it was some guy saying like how he doesn't understand how he's never got a match on a dating app, and he's a bit lonely, and he doesn't think he's ever going to get a girlfriend. But it's okay. You don't need to worry about him because he's got loads of plushies, and when he wants a cuddle, he can just jump in the middle of all his plushies and give them a hug.
You're not meant to talk about the videos that Chris sends us on WhatsApp on this podcast, Jonesy. Okay,
it made me feel so sorry for the plushie loving guy. Maybe he should get onto the Eternights and he can get the schoolgirl.
No, we're not going to promote that attitude. And he's not going to play Eternights. He's not going to go dating schoolgirls. He's going to hit the streets. He's going to start hitting punching bags instead of his emotions, and he's going to get fit and swole, and he's going to wear sandals and get a beard that he didn't have before, because that's exactly what happened in Street Fighter VI. Which Capcom obviously had revealed a handful of months ago. We got a little trailer back in the day. We had that weird dispute over whether or not they'd stolen their logo. Well, resolute as ever, they are back. We got glimpses at new characters like Jamie, alongside familiar faces, Ryu, now with a newfound beard, and Chun-Li. There's also a glimpse at the kind of a battle hub system they're working on, and also a mode that's going to focus with some kind of exploration-like element. Characters apparently seeming to wander around Metro City from a third-person perspective. Again, how that links to the actual fighting game core of Street Fighter VI remains to be seen, but it's it's variety, right? If nothing else,
it is, and the animations still look on point. The combat look really fun, and if they can sort of blend those two worlds together, I think more modes, more game types, is not a bad thing necessarily. So roll on Street Fighter.
And like Street Fighter is also one of those things, like classic fighting game series, totally respect and acknowledge its place within the kind of the annals of video game history. But it's never been one that I've really clicked with. I've always, for whatever reason, played more Tekken, whether on my own or with friends, more Tekken and more Mortal Kombat than Street Fighter. But it always has had a very engaging like look and flow, and sort of like in motion, it's always looked very nice, and that seems persistent with this new entry.
It does. I think the last Street Fighter game I actually owned was Street Fighter 2, so I'm looking to get another entry.
If ever there were a Street Fighter game worth owning, I'd say 2 is probably up there.
It was up there.
Yeah. And hey, if nothing else, Jonesy, this is a new opportunity. All the muscle memory will come back and you'll be doing fireballs in no time. Because if this trailer also wanted us to remember anything, it's like these characters all still do the same fucking moves as they did 30 years ago, so that's good.
Hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
I mean, literally, yeah, the Capcom fucking the Bible, apparently, if this state of play is anything to go by, because there was one more big Capcom reveal that would come later in the show, but we did get 2 smaller little reveals before then. Tunic, which has been on PC and Xbox as a part of Game Pass, in fact, for a couple of weeks now, is coming to PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 on the 27th of September, and we also got a trailer for a very sort of quiet, meditative game with a really cool art style called Season, A Letter to the Future, that's coming out in autumn of 2022. Lots of cycling and photography and audio recording, and just a kind of game that looks like it's going to have a very chilled out, relaxed vibe, very zen,
very Jamie. Yeah,
very me. Like, yeah, okay.
I'll be asking you how it was the week after it came out.
Honestly,
when you've already finished it, and you'll be going, yeah, it was great.
Throw in a couple of characters who are uncertain or questioning their sexualities, and like I'm there with a box of tissues, and those tissues are to wipe my tears away and nothing else, you sexually deviant listeners and watchers. But then, Jose, we got to the big bang, the big finish of the state of play, and it was, as some people predicted, Final Fantasy XVI. a really meaty trailer, lots of kind of like classic Final Fantasy monologuing of like talking about shit where you're not really sure exactly what they're talking about or what relevance it has to the wider story, but it sounds important. Lots of characters with over-dramatic hairstyles, and then lots, it seems, of like gigantic monsters fighting, like weird like health bars at the top that almost seemed like it was two gigantic like fucking Godzilla-like creatures fight each other at the same time in almost like a fighting game style like matchup. I couldn't really tell what was going on. All I know, it was kind of like pretty and engaging in a way that I wasn't expecting, and I'm sure Final Fantasy fans are very happy.
Yeah, it looked phenomenal. Like we were saying as we were watching it, it looked great. Final Fantasy games always look great, but this did look epic and fantastic and massive and sprawling and large and great and everything you would want from a game called Final Fantasy. No idea what the story was about, no idea what was going on, but my God, do they make a very good looking game and something that you want to jump into and play. But Final Fantasy XVI, set in the medieval times apparently, with like you said, monsters and titans and things going on. I don't know where it is. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what time it's set. I don't know what that's got to do with 15 because I played a little bit of that and I don't even know how it relates. But I'm sure someone somewhere knows a lot better than I do. But hey, it looked good, Jamie, and that's what it.
Yeah, I find it best. I find it best to just not second guess this stuff, and like if it looks good and if it is engaging, and like going back to Final Fantasy VII Remake, which Chris kind of convinced me to jump in with, the story was coherent even for a newcomer. It didn't seem like it relied on any of the previous entries in a way that I appreciated, and the combat felt really good. And if the combat feels good in this, like, hey, why not? 90 hours later, you maybe will not regret your decision. That's what we're all hoping for.
Absolutely, yeah.
But yes, Final Fantasy XVI and that big trailer brought around the end of the state of play for June 2nd, and brought around the end of the first kind of big live stream, or whatever you want to call it, of Summer Games Fest, and hopefully a June that is going to be full of announcements and reveals and gameplay trailers and release dates and all that good stuff. And I'll be honest, Jonesy, again, as with all these things, there are going to be people who are a little bit disappointed. There are going to be people who probably expected more first-party things here, even though Sony explicitly said it was a focus on third-party and PSVR 2. There were going to be people such as myself that thought they would maybe go back on their own word and include like a God of War Ragnarok release date in here or something like that. But when you consider that often we are prepped on these live streams of what they're going to contain for very good reason, this seemed about on the money. And your sort of like your mileage on it may vary depending on how much you like Capcom's biggest series and how excited you can get by Final Fantasies and the Street Fighters of the world. But I thought this is for a 25-minute thing that included like a bunch of VR titles. I thought this was pretty solid.
No, agreed. And it was even branded like Summer Game Fest. They even had the logo on the top corner of the state of play. And I think take it as an entire season of exciting game reveals and news. And this is just the very start. This is warming you up for the rest of the games news to come for this season. You don't want to blow your wad in the first day. So I think that Sony have sort of warmed us up in the right way. And now we're ready for more news, more game releases, reveals, and things to come in the next couple of months. Absolutely.
And if you want to keep track of everything that's happening and make sure you don't miss any of those reveals or announcements or release dates or gameplay snippets or whatever the case may be, then the place to be, as always, is with us here at the SuperShow podcast. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can follow us on a podcasting platform of your choice just to make sure you don't miss an episode, because we are going to spend as much of our June as we can religiously following all of the events and all of the conferences and all of the live streams, and hopefully deciphering all of the information we received and putting it into a bite-sized, consumable version for you in these podcasts. So yeah, make sure you kind of stay tuned to the future. It's going to be a big month. I'm looking forward to it, Jonesy.
Me too, mate. Me too.
Right. Thank you, by the way, for joining me on this week's episode. I've had just a wall or a wave of tiredness hit me in the last 20 minutes, which will be especially confusing for people when they watch the edited version of this, because we jump from obviously pre to post state of play immediately, and people are like, why does Jamie lose like 70% of his energy in the click of a finger? Well, it's the beauty of editing, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were trying to be all clever with your little snap, and now suddenly you've realised that it makes you seem like all you've done is snap and make yourself sleepy.
Totally backfired.
Nah, you've still been full of energy and raring to go. So
Thank you.
mate.
That's very kind of you, and thank you for being here with me and being my brother in arms as we waded through the battle of video game news. Thank you all for watching along. Wherever you are, whether it's the video version, the audio version, we appreciate it. If you want to support us, that link once again on patreon.com/SuperShow. And hopefully we will see you next week, where with any luck, we will also be able to be reacting to the opening night of Jeff Keighley's Summer Games Fest. More exciting times ahead. Maybe we'll see you there. I'm going to go to sleep now. Bye.
See you later.